What is up, my friends? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analyst is work you can find over at MMA Junkie, as well as the ActionNetwork.com. But on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do here today. Tonight, whenever you're listening to this, it will be before the fights because it's the end of the fight year of the calendar year 2023. And I've got a special guest co-host with me to help kind of tie up year ends, Neckies, if you will. Shout-outs to podcasts that I and you should love as well, whether it's the Heavy Hands Handies, the Slack, I think he does Slackies. So I'm kind of just trying to keep into that, territory and figure the one good thing about this podcast is its name. So let's crib off that as much as we can. And Neckies sound kind of fun, right? I mean, I don't know about you, Feno, but like hickeys haven't been popular here since middle school. Maybe we'll bring them back in an internet-friendly way. Relax, folks. I'm not going to come at you through the screen. You're safe and secure there. But I'm just saying we are going to give out some Neckies today. So I got my guy Feno from the Fight site, of course. The fight-site.com is where you can support them, as well as... Are you guys shift over to Substack as well, or are you guys still just on Patreon? Because that's where I believe I'm
Ryan is on Substack now, doing a separate thing, and we're still on Patreon.
Okay. You guys are one of the Patreons that I support, and you should too. And my guy Feno just does amazing work. So you should always support him. He just does plenty of work that I'm actually going to reference, perhaps, for some of these awards today. Feno, say what's up, dude.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Feno from the Fight site, as my man Tom already said, and we're here to mostly talk about whatever happened in this crazy year of MMA. It was a weird year. I mean, it feels like it always feels like a weird year, right? But yeah, we had not many superstar moments, but we have some crazy results, some that the UFC might not like, and we usually like those.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll probably be just using these awards kind of as an excuse to talk about the year end of the year. We're not going to be taking this too seriously. Not that we take any of it too seriously, but for example, even though me and Feno both did a fair share of research for this, it's not like, at least, speaking for myself, Feno, I don't feel like the pressure of like when I'm doing like a top 5 or a top 10 list like I do for here for Junkie. On those episodes, I obviously really want to, I'm more insecure about my list and more worried about that, But this, we're just having fun here. And I think that's represented in a lot of the categories, which we'll get to, and which shouldn't surprise you because the proverbial you listeners, like half of these categories are from you guys and gals. So thank you. And thank you, Feno, for joining me. You've been definitely crucial to the show in many ways, and obviously reoccurring because you're a favorite guest of mine, man. So thank you.
I love being on this show. I enjoy it so much. We always have so much fun, to be honest.
The listeners are already feeling comfortable with you too. They're including you in the same gimmicks that they give myself and Jack Slack, apparently, because I listen to his show. Rain Lamina goes, the Feno Sky of being quiet sly, the Dan Tom of being the bomb, happy Neckies to the Slackies. There we go. That's what's up. Look at that. Very honored to have that gimmick carry over here from you, Rain Lamina. Jimmy Kudo, Enforcer number 1. We won't be joined by Enforcer number 2. Support my guy, Ghost Phantom. I'll give out his actual, the weird way he spells it out. But we got Enforcer number 1, Jimmy Kudo, _59 in the house. Dan, so excited for this show, my man. R.I.P. to my boy Ghost. I know we'll get Ghost back soon. Apparently, someone from One, I don't even have connections with One. Otherwise, I would have jumped on that as soon as I saw it. But have no fear. Apparently, Ghost is having people from the proper authorities help him. So hopefully he'll have his channel back up and running, which means we'll get him here, which is just a small awesomeness. He really provides awesomeness to the whole community through his analysis. So definitely support Ghost Phantom there. Actually, you know what? While I'm on Twitter, let me see if I can get his actual handle up on here. For you guys. Here it is. On Twitter, it's at 9H6ST21. That's at 9H6ST21. That's our guy Ghost Phantom there. So shout out to him. James Kendrick in the house. I found out that it is hard to choose the most reliable favorite off the top of my head. I had a little more easier time with the favorite than I did with the underdog. What about you, Fenyo? Can you give a teaser for that without giving away too much?
Because I'm not a better,
Sure.
I'm sometimes a bit lost when it comes to lines and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the other thing is that this year not many fighters have had like a lot of fights. Like for example, fighter of the
Yeah.
year, it's a lot of guys that just had two fights. So
Yeah.
it gets kind of complicated on that front. So
Yeah.
this year was kind of weird on that front. Like not many of the top fighters were very active. I think the only like top like pound for pound fighter that had many fights this year was Volkanovski. And
I
Volkanovski, I'm guessing like I will get into that, but
yeah.
that's a very like reliable favorite. He was not a favorite on both Makhachev fights, by the way. So
Right. And those were his both fights this year, so yeah, no, definitely. We'll start with those. So put a brief pin on that. I just want to plow through the rest of the comments. Rio says in Truesdale, hello, Fenyo. You were awesome the last time you were a guest. I really like your energy. Look at that. I was just saying they love you, and they're coming through here.
thank you.
Makato Kayagoku, love that. Let's have some fun on this award show. Welcome, Fenyo. You are great. You are great too, Makato. We got one of your, we're using one of your categories, and I will credit you properly. Kayagoku also adds, I hope our group aren't too toxic. No, you guys are great, man. If anybody's toxic in here now, it's just probably just me at this point. So you guys are good. But you know what? Let's start on that. Let's start with the. Of course, we're going within the calendar year, and I'm doing like kind of a crime here. I'm doing it before Risen 45, the Risen Japanese New Year show. It's really disrespectful usually when like the big outlets start, but release their awards. But it's like over the last few years, I feel like all the outlets, speaking from someone who works for one of them, they're in a rush to get them out. And it's like, so once the air quote major promotions are in the books, you tend to see them kind of come around this time. I I'm probably taking the next week off, so maybe I could have just taken this week off and we could have done it next week, you know what I'm saying? But it's just the way it worked out with the schedules and whatnot, so hopefully you guys forgive me. And obviously, and I gave it plenty of shouts last podcast because Shinryu's impending rematch with Horiguchi on that card when I was recapping my prospects card. It's definitely in mind, and I do want to shout that show. But I just want to omit the obvious, right, Fenyo, that we're not including the one show, the one big show that hasn't happened, the classic Japanese New Year's Eve show.
Yeah, I mean that's actually happening like next year for us, right?
Yeah, it's weird too. There's that. There's that too.
2022 for them, but
yeah, it's one of those weird things there. Yeah, so I just kind of omit that. I know there will be, and I conclude myself in one of those annoying hipsters that will be like, hey, what about, I just want to make sure I address that off the top. But let's start with one of these funny, these came from James Kendrick, I believe. So shout to James Kendrick, I believe he is in the shout. Big Steve's dad, let's have a positive night to end the year, fellas. Very excited. Yes, absolutely. I'm in a much better mood. Apologies, you having to deal with emo Dan Tom there. That's another reason why we have a guest. Keep me in order here. But no, feeling we're going to have a positive end of the year. And personal news, I pulled the trigger. I talked about it last podcast. I pulled the trigger. Your boy's going to Bang Tao to train in February. Bang Tao Muay Thai, going to get some training in. So we're doing it, baby. Next year. So I'm really effing excited about that. I'm jazzed up right now. We're going to take this energy into the show. And yeah, we'll start off with James Kendrick's most reliable favorite, most reliable underdog. So this one's tough, right? Because you can talk about it in general. Like someone in generally when they're a favorite, they're going to come through. The stats would prove that, right? And you can go to and if you're not a betting person, you go to Tapology when you go to these fighters, and they'll provide you with the closing odds of their fight. And layman's terms, plus number means you're the underdog. Minus number means you're the favorite, right? The bigger minus number, the bigger favorite you are. The bigger number next to the plus sign, the bigger underdog you are, just to put it in basic terms, right? The numbers are close. That means it's a closely lined fight. That means it's competitive on paper. But when you go down that road, it's hard because, this guy might have been, Volkanovski's a reliable favorite, but he was an underdog both these times this year. Well, anytime you can get a guy like Volkanovski at underdog odds, why not, right? At least that was the logic for a lot of people picking and playing him one, maybe both, or one of the times, right? As much as I love Volk, and as much as I'm accused of being a Makhachev hater, I picked Makhachev both times for that. So we'll start with favorite, but I just want to say that like with like underdog too, it's like sometimes maybe they were a favorite and they were an underdog, right? Or they were an underdog, but they won as an underdog, but they also technically lost as an underdog. So you can go a lot of ways, and with this one, maybe I will adjust the wording, and I'm still going to give credit to James Kendrick here because I think this is a good one for the betting portion. A favorite and an underdog for the year. And if we go into bets, that becomes a little too a little too biased for me, maybe, right? Obviously, and then like maybe my guy Feno maybe understands betting and can like talk about it and stay above water, but that's not his thing, self-admittedly, right? He's not out there placing bets or whatever, so that maybe that wouldn't work for him or that wouldn't be his selection. So basically, what I'm saying here is I think that there's a lot of context you can go with this one. This is one where it's encouraged to take a different way. So, for example, my most reliable favorite was the opposite of the Volkanovski series. It was Islam Makhachev. Maybe as much as Islam Makhachev is just a fighter who I feel like Khabib is going to get awards for everything, no matter what year he competes in, right? And I make that, I'm the contrarian in me, makes it come off like I dislike Makhachev. I've actually been a huge fan of Makhachev, even while Khabib was in his prime and making his run up. Before Khabib even got to the title, I was like, I love this guy's Makhachev's game's better. Because he's always been known as, essentially the more technical guy, maybe. Perhaps the more diverse techniques, but Khabib, the more athlete, just a kind of a straightforward game. But I've always been a big fan of Makhachev and his technical game, and even with Khabib, like it's funny, like I need to start recording more of my grappling sessions, like especially when I'm playing from top and the wrestling rides. Like you guys would think I'm the biggest Khabib fan with the leg wraps and the wrist controls, the cross wrist rides or Dagestani handcuffs that I'm constantly going and looking for. Like it's funny, it's like I know I come off as the biggest hater of these guys, but it's more just their fans and their perception. Them as fighters, I've got high things to say, obviously. In fact, there's a lot of my game, and perhaps we'll talk more about the striking side of Makhachev later, maybe. But as far as most reliable favorite, I mean, I was going to be cheeky and say Paddy Pimblett if that Jared Gordon fight took place in 2023. It was, of course, December 2022. That really one of the worst scorecards, right? Paddy Pimblett beating Jared Gordon. And I was going to say Paddy Pimblett because even when he loses, not only is he always the favorite because he's a fan favorite guy, so he's always going to be put in matchups where he's favored on the odds, right? And even when he's not deserved to be favored, he's a fan favorite to kind of, not that this is the fan favorite award, it's a betting favorite award, but you can play off of that too, right? You can use that wordplay. It's part of the definition in there. And because he's a fan favorite, oftentimes you end up being the betting favorite even when you don't deserve to be. And even when you don't deserve to win, guys like Paddy Pimblett still win. So I was going to be a cheeky and say Paddy Pimblett, but no, it's going to be Islam Makhachev, not just because of the cynical answer of like where my contrarian does come out, why it seems like I dislike these guys is because they're so set up to do well. Like, even though Makhachev and Khabib are great, you would just, especially like prior to Khabib's last 3 fights, I would get torched, Feno, for saying that Tony's win streak was more impressive than Khabib's. First of all, Tony's was actually a lightweight win streak. He never missed weight and had catch weights with Khabib, which Khabib did both. Tony finished the guys that Khabib arguably lost to in like Gleison Tebow. I know there's a wink and a nudge there, but the facts is he beat him more impressively, regardless of how you score it. He beat him night and day more impressively, as well as Abel Trujillo. Oh, but he racked up all those takedowns. It's like, yes, but that also means that Trujillo got up a bunch. And to Khabib's credit, he almost admits it himself because you see a style correction at that point, as far as his control and stuff getting better. But, the point was, you get, torched for saying that. But, like, and even though, like, the cynical part of me wants to be like, oh, Makhachev, he got, Bobby Green on short notice. He got, I'm not as impressed as other people were, with a lot of his wins before the Volkanovski. But aside from the cynical part where these guys are set up to win, the fact was, even though I have that attitude, even though I'm a big Volkanovski fan, not only did I pick Makhachev both those fights, but particularly the second one, like, I feel like everybody was overcorrecting the steering wheel because I guess I got a decent amount of credit. I don't think I deserved it. I don't think it was a crazy call, but I basically picked Makhachev by decision. But I was like, Volkanovski's going to make this much more competitive as the fight goes down the stretch, and that's what happened. And I guess that was a crazy call because I guess people were like, just drinking from the Makhachev and Khabib teat or whatever, and then maybe they were blinded by that. So everybody kind of overcorrects the steering wheel. And then, despite the short notice, and maybe because we had these weird short notice results throughout the year, but for me, and we'll talk about potential knockout of the year candidate that happened on this last pay-per-view card, right? Of a fighter taking a fight on short notice at 145 pounds in Volk's division. That's kind of what should happen. Like the guy on short notice at a high level, it's bad to do. And I felt like crazy once again in their second fight saying that, guys, I love Volk too, but like why are just as much, if not more people picking him? And B, why are the odds reflecting that in the sense of not only is Makhachev not a bigger favorite like he should be for a guy he already beat and now he's facing him again on short notice, but he actually closed, I believe, and held for the majority of fight week as a lower favorite than you could originally get him in the first time against Volk with a full camp. That makes no sense, right? That makes no sense. Even if you were optimistic for Volk, which is fine if you were, but price-wise, that makes no sense. Why is it priced that way? And you were essentially getting a guy who everybody acts like is, because I remember back to my Armin Sarukian rant, like everybody was acting like minus 300 was the steal of the year against him. And I'm like, that's a decent price. And if you have a bankroll, go ahead and lay it. But I'd be careful about A, completely discounting Sarukian, and more specifically, people were like, I'm just going to play the inside the distance line at that price. I'm like, B, Sarukian's going to be better than you think. It was the same with the Volk 1. I'm like, I'm not saying he's going to win, but let's not pretend that Islam Makhachev is Jesus fucking Christ and he can just snap his fingers and win. And it was kind of like those overcorrections, whereas the minus 300 was arguably a steal by the time you fast forward to his body of work. We've already seen him beat Volkanovski, although it was competitive, and I know he was losing in the fifth, but Volk's coming in on literally like a week notice. I don't know, Feno. I'm talking too much. I'm bouncing it back to you, but it made no sense to me. So whether we're talking about reliable as a favorite career-wise or we're talking about a single betting opportunity this year in 2023, Islam Makhachev is the most reliable favorite to me.
Yeah, I think that's a very good pick. On the topic of the rematch of Makhachev and Volk, one of the easiest picks of the year, to be honest. Like we saw the first fight, Makhachev won, and then we get it again. You know that Volkanovski not expecting a lightweight fight and not in shape, taking a fight against a larger opponent on very short notice. Like even if you like Volkanovski, and I thought I was going to pick Volkanovski in a rematch, but I needed the preparation. I needed that.
Yes.
I was not going to pick Volkanovski on a week's notice to beat Islam Makhachev, not after how the first fight went. Like the best moment of Volkanovski obviously came on the fifth round, where he sort of dropped Makhachev and then went at it with the ground pound. And you can tell Islam was tired, but by that point, after muscling so much in the clinch and all of that. And there was a bit of discussion on Twitter of saying, like, Volkanovski's out of shape. Obviously, ridiculous. Like, he's not out of shape, but there's a clear difference in his physique between the second fight and the first one. Like, you can tell he had more functional mass for the first fight because he was prepping for that. And for the second one, he was like, of course I can make lightweight because I'm a featherweight, and yeah, he was probably larger for the first one while being lean. So
yeah, and that was the thing too. Like his complaint, he ate specific to put that mass on for the first fight, right? Whereas he was just kind of walking around on this one, and he actually complained about it. He said he wouldn't do it again. He probably would have done it more where like he trained for a 45 camp and just come in more at his regular size because he was feeling the heaviness, and that was with a full camp and kind of planned, right? And so that he really was giving himself an extra, coat to walk with in that sense, like what he must have felt. It didn't look that bad. Like he said, he wasn't crazy out of shape or anything, but as far as functional. Yeah, man. So that kind of, for me, I guess, would be my most reliable favorite. Did you
But
land
on
on
the
one
other
for
side,
yours? Sorry,
the
go
other
ahead.
side, on the flip side, Volkanovski had a 145 fight against Jair,
Yeah,
and
that's
he
right.
was a big favorite, and that was a very easy pick too.
That
So,
was.
um, other than that, yeah, I think Shavkat, someone said on the chat, and I think that's a very good shout.
That's a good shout.
Uh, yeah, Shavkat probably. Probably the trend is gonna stop when he fights Leon, if he fights Leon soon, because I expect Shavkat to be a favorite against Leon, and I think I would pick against him on that one for the time being. But
By the
let's not get too ahead.
Yeah, are you laughing at Big Steve's dad, Avi, as well? Like I am. I'm just giggling.
I think I realize
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah, I. You know the funny thing is, I actually have a Christmas sweater I've worn before with that guy on it. I have it in my closet, and I forgot to wear it for the last show, and I'm like, oh, I can't wear it for the award show. It's not Christmas anymore. So thank you, Big Steve's dad. You are representing that poor gentleman who probably gets no rights, and nor his family gets any rights for the stupid merch that I have bought and others have bought. So cheers to that. R.I.P. All right. Um, that's a real inside baseball for audio listeners that have no clue about big donger memes. All right, moving on to underdog. Jesus. So I know I was kind of long winded, but you could apply the same thing for underdog. Um, this is funny. Like part of me, for example, like I don't know if this would burn one, and he was only an underdog once this year, so he's not my official pick. So I apologize if I'm burning him for this. But like a guy like Pantoja, he is like this kind of award, like most reliable underdog from a purely betting standpoint. These are the fighters I was trying to come to mind. I'm like, who are the fighters that I say on this program, folks? And you guys hear me say this, listeners, where I say, I'm taking a shot at underdog. I don't necessarily feel great because it's gambling on MMA and it's an underdog. But if you are going to, you want somebody that's going to fight for your money, right? And like guys like Pantoja have the heart, they have the durability. We weren't sure about the stamina, but he showed this year he's got the 5-round stamina. And that's a guy where like, he could have lost could he have lost those fights? Sure, especially the Moreno fight. Depending on how certain things go, or maybe how you decide to score it, right? If you're one of the 3 judges, right? And one of the judges, I believe, did score it for Moreno, right? So it's not that he can't, lose these fights. He could absolutely lose these fights, but at least you're going to have the peace of mind knowing that, he's going to be somebody that goes out and fights for your money, that it's going to be somebody that's going to be notable for this kind of award and not the but why piss poor fight IQ award, right? Like you don't want to bet on those people. Who we'll get to for that category. Like you don't want your money on them. But for underdog, like I think of a guy like Pantoja. What kind of names jumped out to you for this one, Feno? Or outright, where did you land?
Underdogs. This year, I'm not sure what underdogs did well. I think, I mean, I can recall like single instances because, as I said, like
Yes.
not many fighters fought a lot here. Uh, Going back to the Emmett versus Bryce, I think Emmett
Yeah.
closed as an underdog. That
Yeah.
was insane. Uh,
Yep.
Maybe the worst line of. I mean, I don't know how they opened. So maybe they opened with Emmett as a favorite, but
No, no.
it closed as a.
He opened at, and it was funny. I was just listening to the Bloody Elbow Substack, and when I finished an episode, like it jumped back to like I guess it was like Zayn and Connor on the Vivi. And I was like, oh, wow. And they were breaking down this match on the prelim. And I was like in the shower, so I wasn't by my phone. I was just letting it play. And it was funny because they had very similar thoughts that I'm sure you had on your podcast. I remember you as saying, because I always listen to the early prelim and the pay-per-view preview that you do. Shouts to your content there on the Fight Side podcast feed. Also to the Fight Side MMA podcast as well. Really good stuff with Christian and Silas. But yeah, like, and I was talking about last week, like, I sentimented your words exactly, Feno. That's one of the best lines. And you're not even a gambler, and you realize that. Like, how the heck? And I referenced a fight that you could kind of reference for the Volk Yair, which was Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez back at UFC 211, where Frankie Edgar you could get him pretty much for near even money against Yair. And at that time, this is Frankie Edgar who's never been stopped or he like it was indestructible, right? And it was just like a bad style matchup, right? And but this one actually he Emmett opened, and I'm going to focus on this, and I'm glad you because this is my pick, by the way. Mine was Josh Emmett. He actually was an underdog all three times he fought this year, and he actually lost more than he won. But one was a really bad style matchup. Yair Rodriguez, southpaw kicker, right? And even then, he took a lot of a beating, and he's always been a guy like he's not as durable as a Pantoja on paper. Emmett has been stopped, right? But you look at like what he's been through, like having to go through facial fractures. He's had like bones coming out of his finger back at lightweight against that John Tuck fight back in Europe. It was like a UFC Rotterdam, I believe. He took it on short notice. He flew 7 days. Might have been like his UFC debut. Like the dude really has been through the ringer. Like as far as what he's come back from the facial fractures that he got against Jeremy Stephens in a fight where he actually rocked Stephens before he got finished. But yeah, he's been in there with big hitters, and whatnot. And like he will fight for your money. I don't think he beat Cater, right? But the fact that he was able to come forward, take some shots, and then answer to the body, he was able to make it competitive, regardless of how you scored it, right? So he kind of does fit that dog will fight for your money. And again, it's hard to find somebody in any calendar year who is always an underdog and wins all those fights. That's just really hard, So I don't know. I and for just standout performance because again he opened at plus 107 and underdog, and Bryce Mitchell opened at minus 118. To answer your question, Feno. So Bryce Mitchell actually opened as a slight favorite. Even that was silly. That would be a line where I'm like, oh, I better jump on Emmett now before it goes away. Because I imagine everybody else is going to see it. No, like I always say, like everybody. Shout out to maybe we'll have to incorporate a Soggy Dick special for old fighter who upsets the odds kind of an award. The Soggy Dick special, which is you can also call any Danton bet because I love betting on old fighters at plus money. But Feno, the thing about MMA gamblers, and I tell my audience here all the time, is that they are so. If you could be racist against old people, they're absolutely racist against old people. Like, if you are, 34, 35, they are just, you're done. You're, they select the people they like Jared Fogle selects the kids he likes, or Herbert from Family Guy. I mean, it's very similar. It's very similar in how they bet their money. You know what I'm saying? It's age, baby. It's who's more ripe. And even though Bryce Mitchell isn't a typical athletic, spinny, kicky, flashy guy like a Yair Rodriguez, because they also on the other side they love that shit, right? Like it doesn't even matter if you're putting it together, setting it up. They're like, oh my god, he's athletic and he spins. I think Rogan called him explosive too, and that'll just sell people, right? They're like, oh, right, you just have a couple stupid knockouts that make no sense, right? And that's the classic fade spots. And don't get me wrong. Plenty of people I know have been very profitable this year because you're more profitable more often than not, right? Youth, it's a young man's game. So obviously, I'm tongue-in-cheek here. Obviously, more often than not, the young fighter wins. But Feno, do you have that in you too, where you're just you kind of you feel good for the old guys upsetting the apple cart like this when they're getting counted out, disrespected?
Yeah, especially when I feel the matchmaking is looking for them to lose. And that happens very often. The UFC operates like that. I mean, most organizations and boxing especially, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, and coming back to Emmett, I mean, if you think about it, he was reliable in both ways. Against Jair, he played the actual role of the underdog because you were expecting him to lose, and we both very easily picked him to lose in that one. And then he played the underdog that wins against Bryce. Another thing that Bryce had against him, and it was very weird too because watching tape, I mean, Bryce often fights as a southpaw, and I thought that advantage was not going to be there because Emmett was making a camp to prepare for Giga, who is a super long southpaw. So he was not going to surprise Emmett with the southpaw kicking stuff. I mean, maybe it was going to work, but he was not going to surprise him at least. But then Bryce decided to fight the whole fight orthodox for some reason.
Yep, yep.
And I'm guessing that Bryce is maybe naturally an orthodox fighter, and he needs the camp to feel like sharp from southpaw. And because he did not have a camp here, he just defaulted to orthodox. I'm guessing. I don't know. It was a weird decision, to be honest.
Yeah, he lists himself as southpaw, and he does primarily fight from that. But yeah, I did notice that too. He did switch a bit, which was, I don't know, that was weird. I figure the southpaw look with the style, at least maybe buy yourself some time, giving some different looks. Sometimes people will go southpaw just to bullshit and buy themselves some breathing time. That's like a tactic people will use.
And also he's a good wrestler from southpaw. Like that's
Yeah.
how he took Topuria down. So
Yeah, that's where like his leg kick catch counters into stuff are usually too, off that lead leg. When they try to kick his lead leg off as a southpaw, he'll do that reach down and stiff arm and kind of run through.
yep.
And yeah, but that was the. I mean, I feel really biased because I was on it. I know, but like that was just a stupid line. You could not justify the opening line as opening him as even a slight underdog, much less people betting him over $1 more the other way. Closing at plus 200. That was just that was a gift. Maybe we'll talk about Emmett Mitchell more. Maybe we won't. But I want to go down to best bodywork performance. This was from Jimmy Kudo, the enforcer. Knowing how, he knew how to get not that this is the hardest barrier to entry, but he knew how to get my attention. A bodywork one. Feno, I know this one must have excited you, huh?
Yeah. A lot of candidates.
Yes.
My pick might be not very exciting, but I thought it was like a very smart performance. Because and it's like Jack Della versus Kevin Holland because
Nice.
he finally did what fighters are supposed to do against these super long, hard to hit to the head fighters, like Randy Brown. It's another one of these that are like super long and they have like not super layered head movement, but they have all the leeway of the distance that they set. So what you should do is like going after the legs, going after the body,
Mm-hmm.
and Jack Della here getting like super clean connections against Holland to Holland's credit, like insane endurance to resist those
Mm-hmm.
body shots because they were not like soft at all and he was no selling them. So maybe that's why that performance is not like very lauded, but I thought like it was a smart performance because I think Kevin Holland looked pretty good in that fight too. He was doing a good job of evading to the head, making Jack Della chase him and putting him out of position. But Jack Della, being such a ambidextrous puncher, bails him a lot during those exchanges. It's something that I talk about in Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway back in the day. Is that like Holloway was getting the better angles inside the pocket sometimes, but Dustin just has so many options because he's such a good puncher from both
Yeah.
sides, and that's something that it's not very common in MMA. Like some guys can put, obviously most fighters can put combinations together with meaningful punches from both sides, but then they don't have the flexibility to put like these combinations with like an expansive language of punching. And what I mean is like finding like different kinds of uppercuts and hooks to different ranges. That's kind of lost for some guys in the pocket. But when you see guys like Dustin and Jack Della in those spaces, they have options from places that you do not expect them to have options, and that's something very interesting because Jack Della would like switch into range. Holland would try to circle. He would get like an angle, but Jack Della can always lead hook from wherever he's, and he would go to the body with that, and then just cover behind his shoulder to not get hit back because that's the danger of going to the body. Is like you're punching down and you're getting like your shoulder away from your jaw. You're dropping your guard, obviously,
Yeah.
and he was doing a very good job of like staying safe from like what you would think are compromised positions. So that's why I like that performance a lot.
That's a great point. I think Kevin Holland, both the way he reacts and his like Gumby like ability to take damage, and like still keep fighting, like whether he's got that broken arm and he starts like actually jabbing right, or like it's so weird that it makes performances like both more impressive than they should be, but it makes it look less impressive than perhaps what's actually going on to like the common eye if you're missing these little details that you point out, you know. And I like that fight because it's really similar to the fight I went with in the sense of I didn't expect either to go to the distance either way, no matter who you picked on these ones. And this one I was right on my pick. The other one I was like right on my bet. I was wrong on my bet, wrong on my pick. But like my analysis for both these fights were spot on. And this one, I remember, I thought either one of them was going to get a finish, maybe by round 2. But the main thing was the analysis as far as that was the body work. And offering up those targets. I know people were unsure if Jack Della was going to fight smart. I don't have it in front of my head, but I think he had a wild fight before. And there was another one where it was a classic where I was like, hey guys, I'm picking Jack Della Maddalena over, what was this guy's name? Basil. Sorry, that's how I remembered his name. Basil Hafez, yeah. Basil from Austin Powers. But I said, and I should have bet the decision, right? Because I actually picked it. I said Jack Della's either going to get a finish in round 2, because again, that's his round. That's the round that I feel like it's not his round, but to me, it's right there. Yeah. And he almost got a finish in that round 2, if you remember. That was the closest he got to finish that fight. I'm like, if not, it's going to a decision. I'm like, because this Hafez guy, even on short notice, and I'm Mr. Anti-Short Notice, I'm like, this guy looks like he's in good shape, trends up in elevation, had a fight recently booked. You know, it just seems like he's got that dog in him. Looks big, but not too big, where he's cutting like maybe a ton of weight. I'm like, this guy is durable as crap. So I actually wasn't surprised by that performance. And that was one, again, kind of like with we talked about that dynamic with the Islam Makhachev dynamic, where you have that expectancy bias, where you expect him, Jack Della's going to blow out a guy on short notice easily, right? And the fact that he didn't, I feel like everybody like almost was like doubting, right? And hating on him. And I was like, no, I know Holland can surprise, and I know Della came off that questionable. I'm like, but I think people like us, where we see the skills there, we're like, it's there. He's got it. It's there. Trust me, it's there. He can do it. Not saying he's gonna win, but like if Holland was gonna win, it was gonna be off like a real bad mess up off Jack Della, or something like that. But it was the body work and also the cage positioning is what really kind of leading me to the Jack Della Maddalena side, is the fact that he's got the Robbie Lawler kill zone with the Jack Della does. With whenever you get between the inner black octagon lines in the cage, he just lights up, right? Even, questionable IQ, Della Maddalena, low output Lawler, it didn't matter. As soon as they get their opponents there, any iteration of these guys, that's their effing kill zone, right? And where does Holland tend to hang out? So that was kind of my thing. And you saw that it was sometimes it's just the directionality can be enough to edge a fight one way. And in those exchanges and the dynamic that you were giving, I think that fed into that dynamic that you were saying too, as far as for the Jack Della side and being able to edge out some of the exchanges en route to victory. So that's a really good pick. Real quick before I get to mine, Big Steve's dad said his most reliable underdog was Brendan Allen. He was a good underdog. He's been underdog a lot. That's actually a really good shout. I know
was he an underdog against both Muniz and Paul Craig?
Not Craig, but he was an underdog against Muniz.
Against Muniz is insane. That was a very easy pick, to be honest.
Yeah, I picked Muniz by sub. I was bad. It was funny. My round robin was like I picked 4 fighters to win by submission, and like so it was like Mike Malott and like they all won. And the last one was Muniz. And I was like, well, technically he's a 3rd-degree black belt and who subbed Jacare. And Brendan Allen's a 1st-degree black belt who's been subbed by... Not that was my analysis, obviously. Like I had reason. I had more reasoning than that for my pick or whatever. But like, it was just funny. I was just like, technically this is the best submission grappler on the card, especially at that point of his career, right? He hadn't been kind of frauded out or whatever. So I was like, I'm in good sitting, right? But then as soon as I thought that, it was like the MMA gods pulled all the alarms. Like, how did Dan Tom get this far this year? Nope. They started pulling the alarms. And not only did I got the Eminem walkout curse. Muniz comes out to Eminem. I'm like, no, not Eminem, right? And then it was like the Drake broadcast bet where like somebody just laid multiple $100,000 on Muniz. I'm like, no. And then when he's getting announced, he fist bumps Buffer. And I'm like, dude, you just did the trifecta. Like, one of those things is enough to curse you, right? The Eminem walkout, the buffer fist bump. Just ask John Anik about that one. Or the broadcast bet, which is a new thing since the pandemic bets on the screen. That's been the new jinx, right? And fuck all three. I'm not saying he would have. You're right. Like in hindsight, great pick, great call, Feno, great pick, Steve's dad. But I'm not saying he would have won. But I'm just saying having all those three things against you, I was like, oh man, no, the MMA God's not letting me cash the grand ticket. We're gonna get one this year in 2024, folks. I'll get to the rest of your comments, but just to pick up the thread on best bodywork performance. So I had two written down, and the one that I'm going to give a burn real quick and give a shout to is Tim Means versus Andre Fialho. Fialho
That
was
was
a guy,
good. That was good.
yeah, that was an underrated fight too. Like I know I was seeing it through Tim Means' colored glasses, but Fialho had his moments when I went back to rewatch. Like it was a fun fight. And there's actually some fun grappling exchanges in that fight too as well. Like Tim Means has some cool reversals. But there was a lot of body work. It was the body works being set up. It was something that you hear Dom Cruz was crediting, which made me feel less crazy. And it was something that I cited in my analysis specifically because, you know, Fialho, especially if you look at like the, you know, spin side kicks from, what do you call? What was that guy? Looks like Leon the Professional, but he's the Dagestani dude. Muslim Salikov, King of Kung Fu. Like, you see other fights too. Like, you'll see Andre Fialho, it's to the body. He doesn't really like body shots too much. He fought Chris Curtis, got hurt to the body on the regionals. I don't know if it was WSOF or something like that or PFL. But it's always been a thing of his. And I'm like, oh, Tim Means is a guy who actually works the body. And it was just a classic Tim Means performance. He was coming off of a bunch of losses, you know, like 3 in a row. And I love Tim Means. And just getting jobbed, even, you know, winning fights till he was losing. Like a lot of those fights dating back to the crazy, what's his name, Spring Break, Nico Price. It's even Alex Morono, because he was tuning up Alex Morono. I don't care what people, atrocious that people scored that first round for Morono. Sorry. I know he won anyways, and I love Morono, and I love Team Fortis, so I'm not even, like, salty about that. It's like, God damn it, man.
Sure.
The technical dudes, you know, the technical dudes, man, the guys. Tim Means is one of those, but what edged it out was I had to go with Barbosa versus Yusuf, man. This was
that was very good too.
Yeah, this was not just like, you know, I don't know if it was a fight of the year candidate. Maybe people were saying it at the time. It was definitely a memorable fight for a lot of reasons. But this is essentially like Gray Maynard, Frankie Edgar 2 at UFC 101.
Yeah.
Was it 125? Except instead of the guy coming back from the big round to earn the draw, he actually gets the victory. And body work was a big part of that. You know, it was what allowed him to kind of get back into the fight, to help stop the use of pressure and help bring on the already kind of suspect use of cardio. And that was also one of those fights where, like, listeners of the show to people on Twitter were like tagging me a bunch, like, oh, Dan Tom must be like, you know, coming all over himself with his body work. You know, posting like Randy Marsh from South Park memes, you know, in front of the computer. And all that, so it was. I feel like I had to go with this one, man. It was great, you know. Edson from knees taking over the clinch dynamic in that fight, seeing what shifted in that, the left hooks, the right hands to the body, the switch kicks to the body, the spin kicks to the body. I mean, he just hit everything that you could to as far as a body shot to a body shot. It was just amazing. There wasn't a finish off of it, you know, but. As far as a bodywork performance, though, that's the award, right? It's not bodywork finish necessarily. It's performance. So I went with another one that went to decision as well. Edson Barbosa versus Sadiq Youssef.
I have two shots more.
Yes, please.
Both decisions as well. Borshoff versus Sadikov.
Oh, yeah.
I'll talk about that one again later. But yeah, I mean, brilliant, like boxing to the body by Borshoff. And one that I think it's very underrated was Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes.
Yeah.
These to the body.
Yeah.
They did a lot to make up for the athleticism of Gomes. Gomes is very like strong and powerful, and Angela Hill always with the good work to the body, especially with like the long straight right hands and the knees from the clinch.
Absolutely.
Someone mentioned.
Yeah, I'm gonna clear.
Sorry, I'm not saying the names.
You're good.
Yeah, someone said about Joshua Ban versus Borjas, I think
Yeah.
it was. Yeah, that was, and I was very salty about that one because Borjas has such a beautiful left hook to the body,
Yeah.
and now it was Joshua Van with the body work in that one. Um,
But I feel like
Even
Borjas
though
was
I'm
showing what
not
you were
that.
talking about though early, right? Because that almost made my list too. I was almost going to pick that for a dual one because I remember Borjas not just had his moments early in that fight, but he was showing exactly what you were talking about, his own body work, correct?
Yeah, and then late he showed some body work, and he was making it close. It was a very good fight, to be honest.
Yeah,
Good
really
fight.
good fight, really good. That's when I wanted to shout for this category, and a lot of these could be fall under many categories. It's like that one could be an underrated, low key, amazing fight category, which I wouldn't hate anybody for, and I'll turn to you or the chat here in a second. I'm going to catch up with the chat because some of my other shouts might step on other categories. So, or winners for categories, at least in my book. So I don't want to burn any. But James Kendrick says, my most reliable favorite is obscure, and it has to be with bad matchmaking, Bo Nickel. Yeah, that's a very reliable favorite. Again, back to the Paddy Pimblett to Islam Makhachev hybrid of matchmaking there. Like, yeah, he fits kind of right in between those two, somewhere in that spectrum, right?
Yeah, Bo Nickel and Pfeiffer too, if you want to go
Oh
that
yeah,
route. Like,
oh yeah, yeah. They're gonna make him look. Oh yeah, absolutely. God forbid a slap fighter is good enough to make the Contender Series, and he gets signed. Dana's gonna pump the shit out of that person. You guys said he couldn't. I, I, fuck it, Friday. Sorry, just an amalgamation of
it's
this one.
just that and
Times
having a
pink.
stroke.
He just blows up. He's just. We'll see how far into this lawsuit we get, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting to. He's like Scott Coker before like Strikeforce sold, and he didn't do it as much this time, but you could tell they were getting near to a sale because he would just start sweating profusely when asked questions. I think Dana's move is not going to be sweating or turning. He's just going to turn pink and red with anger, even get even angrier. James Kendrick, my most reliable underdog has to be Sean Strickland, unfortunately, except he was minus 150 against a bus, but plus 193 to Imavov to end last year. Yeah, or to start this year, I believe. Actually, that didn't make much sense to me. That line, I remember kind of just not blind betting it because it's weird because if I pick Strickland, it's going to be count as bias, I guess, because he's an extreme couture guy. Even though I picked against him plenty, even including this year. But I remember that I think it was that Imavov fight. I was like, I don't think this is a very playable line here. And sure enough, yeah, perhaps we'll talk more about Strickland later. Jimmy Kuda says, I'll agree with Dan since I'm not good with betting odds. Rio says, and Truesdale says, oh yeah, Sarukian was a good underdog. He says, not underdog, sorry, good favorite. Sarukian, yeah, this year he was definitely a reliable favorite. Makoto Kayagoku, I'm biased here, but I just want to throw this out there. Whaley opened as a minus 500 and proved it. Yeah. We might talk about Whaley more later. We'll see. Ben Cone! Sarukian the GOAT shall take the belt this year. Goat, Turtis, White Horns. Sarukian is Ben's guy. Nice. Love Ben. Agent Ben 10. I don't know if he's doing another beef jerky batch, but I'll make sure to share that out. And if you guys ever see that, you better jump on it. Makatu Kayagoku. You mean next year? Yeah, he's going to get it. James Kendrick. You like the Slack. You like Jack Slack description of Pantoja? 4-chord garage band on the feet, Mozart on the ground. That's pretty cool. I dig that. I mean, I feel like, and we saw that with, I think you see that more in Pantoja's clinch work, which I think analysts like himself and others have pointed out better than I could. But, like, you do see that Pantoja, like, if you look at his bio, he has, like, amateur Muay Thai championship accolades from just competing on the regional scene over there in Brazil. Again, not the craziest competition or whatever, but you see that the guy actually spent a lot of time doing Muay Thai. All right, I'm gonna read a couple more, and then we'll get right back to the awards. Felipe Melo, these are the two most handsome MMA analysts in the biz. Way too kind. I'll give that to Feno over there, but I'll take being lumped in with him. I'll take it. Ronan Curtis, shout out to the ancient fighters, my man. I don't know who you are, but you have my taste, sir. UFC also hates their old fighters. To be fair, yep, they do. They do. Even before they fall out of business favor. It's just it's an economics game. You know, they're too high priced when you got all these cheaper options there. Ben Cohn, yes, okay. Oh, real quick, James Kendrick. My bodywork performance was Josh Van. That was the one you shouted earlier, Fenyo, from the chat. And then Jimmy Kudo. We are big fans of Jack Della on this show. Yes, we are. Thank you for repping Jimmy Kudo. Tim Means is possibly the king of really old fighters. He is. He's got over 50 fights. He's one of those dudes like the Anthony Smiths. He's still out there in the UFC with over 50 fights, which is pretty crazy with what we just said, considering, right, Fenyo?
Yeah. Does Jim Miller have more than 50 fights?
Yeah, I think Jim Miller does too. I mean, that's the only reason why I'm going to pay money for UFC 300. Like I was talking to Ben earlier, I can fly out to New York for pretty cheap to go train with him. And I was like, maybe I'll do it when the UFC's in town. I'm like, well, maybe not because I can't afford to go to the UFC's in New York, especially. But I think 300 is going to be here. So hopefully I can make that. Last one before I push on. Ronan Curtis says, a slap fighter in the cage would be insane. Yeah, I don't even want to put that into the universe. I apologize. Let's move on with the next award. Best Southpaw Technique of the Year. Okay, this one I'm really interested to hear what Fenyo has. Of course, this has been a good year, I think, for the top 5 shows. I think I would argue we brought those back strong. We've got thumbnails, thanks to my guy here. We've got a bunch of excellent guests as well, thanks to my guy here, who Fenyo was on the top 5 Southpaws. So we know this topic very well already. We've covered it very well. But Southpaw Technique of the Year. We'll get to the Southpaw of the Year. What was your Southpaw Technique of the Year, Fenyo?
This one is interesting. Clearly, from last year, it was like the double attack of the rear straight into the high kick, and we saw another big knockout with that from an orthodox fighter this year, Justin Gaethje killing my boy Dustin Poirier with that. Yeah. Other than that, I'm still waiting for the year of the southpaw jab. We've seen a few performances, but still not like very deep in the meta. I think we saw a lot more leg kicking from open stances this year than another year, especially after like Blachowicz had that success. I think that was last year against Ankalaev, like with those like calf kicks in open space that are very disgusting. But I think a lot of fighters are going to the well with that. Another shout out to Justin Gaethje. Once again, an orthodox, but fighting in open stances. He was doing great stuff with outside kicking from open stances. That was very cool too.
Yeah.
But I think I want a group like Ghost the other day was talking about this, like the snap kick to the body that Leon was using, and also like Cyril Gane and Imavov. But I want to like group all the front kicks from open stance to the body as the technique of the year. That was like, because it's something that Strickland also used against Adesanya when they were in open stances. So I think my vote would go to that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I feel like you mentioned it. When this topic came up, what came to my mind was almost the opposite. Was the inverse, like Charles on Dariush and Gaethje on Poirier. Like seeing the stuff that I would pick for southpaws, having it being done to them. Unfortunately, there was a decent amount of that this year, and I agree with the front kick because it also pairs with another thing that we see a lot, which I want to say, did one of the Saeed Nurmagomedov get a knockout like this? Was it like Ione Barcelos or something? And then we saw it again recently. And
Umar, no, not Saeed.
Was it Umar? Yeah, it was Umar. Yeah, Umar, and it was the lifting knee where you like, it looks like the front kick. Like you could throw a front kick to establish it. You could change that front kick to a tie kick and then have that play to a head kick. Or you can, it was one of my favorite entries, and I was working on this, and actually southpaw jab, you mentioned that. I was actually working on this today. Shout out to my guy Don, who's just a bigger, stronger, better version at everything than me. So he's a good guy to work with. But he was just reminding me of like my favorite weapon. I'm like, I preach this all the time. Why don't I use it? The checking jab, keeping something in your eyes, just in general, no matter what stance pairing, no matter what stance you are, just general jabs, jabbing in the eyes, keeping something in their eyes, using it to set up your kicks. But the southpaw jab particularly because it's just an annoying check. It's really from an annoying angle people aren't used to, because if you listen to even UFC commentary from the actual fighters, sadly they will tell you that jabs don't exist in the open stance still, which is just a crazy myth. To Feno's point, that's what we want to see. Those were great shouts, but mine actually is going to go to mine's actually going to go to a double attack, and it's actually I wasn't able to clip it, but if you type in Islam Makhachev, I believe, and you put in you see that Feno's name tag there, you put that in the little search brackets for artist formerly known as Twitter, you should find Islam Makhachev's tell for his kick. So it's not just so much the kind of in the familial tree of the southpaw double attack of having to guess the body, the head, especially when you mix the the straight in there, which wasn't so much the case in this finish. Not that Makhachev is beyond doing that. But what you kind of keyed in on, which I love, is again, it's one of my favorite techniques as a southpaw, and playing off that what's coming. Is it the body? Is it the head? Is it a straight? Is it a straight front kick? Is it the tie kick? Body or head, and all that. And man, like he didn't get my southpaw of the year, obviously, but like it could be almost interchangeable, right? And we'll get to who I have for my southpaw of the year. But it could very easily have been Islam Makhachev, because not just as we're talking about the basic differences that everybody talks about, Islam a little more technical, just almost like spams wrist control. Not that Khabib didn't do wrist control; he obviously did a lot of it. Khabib more athletic, a little more linear with his approach, both in some literal ways to just his meta, right? But the striking is just you can't even compare. I mean, you can't even compare him to Khabib. It's two different people, two different stances. He is so good as a southpaw, Islam Makhachev. I see my guy Dan Albert in the chat. He just shouted the pull counter on Volk. Shout out to Dan Albert. Amazing, excellent, and handsome bastard himself. He won't tell you that, but me and Feno will. No, Dan goes, Islam Makhachev's pull counter on Volk. Like, this guy's like a fully fledged southpaw. Like, again, everybody's not jabbing as much as we'd like to see, but as far as the things you should never leave home without, check right hooks, which was another big weapon that helped him, kind of stabilize the early success Volk was finding in their first fight, was classic southpaw moves. I know that first fight, that first fight went down this year as well, so it counts. But yeah, like, this guy really could be deserving as the southpaw of the year, Makhachev. And again, it's funny because I'm accused of being an Islam hater, right? It's more just, but it's more of his fans and like the way he's perceived. It's not him as a fighter, or even like as a person or anything like that. Like, I don't like, I respect him, as a fighter and stuff, and don't know him as a person, but obviously I respect the dude. But yeah, man, it's just that hitch that you beautifully illuminated in your clips there, Feno. I didn't really notice that before, and I'm like, yeah, and it's almost like he knows it. It's like he's not even trying to hide that tell. And I get that, because when you're really flowing and you really take the initiative, especially if you're able to land a couple good front body kicks, and you can get them reacting to that knee, that lifting knee, whether you want to lift a knee, like I was trailed off earlier, was talking about entries, where you do the lift and you do the step down. We've seen those knockouts. Yep. Which everybody's been surprised by, but if you go and look at my southpaw reports, that's like the main thing everybody uses, whether it's guys like Max Holloway or dudes like Rouhani Yahya, and that's kind of the spectrum right there. Striking. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I mentioned both those names because you look at how orthodox fighters, air quotes, because I know both those guys will switch, especially Max, but how orthodox fighters deal with southpaws, and a lot of that is that lifting knee. And if you know how to weaponize that, right, and use it to kind of take your initiative and launch from there, it is just beautiful. So that, in a nutshell, is my southpaw technique, and that is due to you, man. You really illuminated that just so beautifully.
Yeah, it is a very interesting thing, because you would think that having like a clear tell on a technique, the fact that Islam almost like drag his rear foot before kicking, but actually that helps him, because he doesn't have to concern to make all his kicks look that similar. Just having this big initial motion helps him hide a lot of his intentions. And Volkanovski, you can tell in that fight, he went with the intention of not conceding ground to the kicks, but he was like playing a lot of like blocking, but he was not going for a universal block. What's what's a universal block for kicks? You just like check high and go double guard like Fedor did against Krokop. But
Hmm.
obviously Volkanovski didn't want to go that route here because he didn't want to stand in one foot against
Yeah.
such a good grappler, and that's something that Fyodor could afford against a pure striker like Mirko.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I mean Volkanovski was trying to like he was playing the guessing game too much, and the tale from Islam was like throwing him off because he was not realizing where it was going, and at the end he was covering, but because he was like unsure, he was covering like his jaw, and he got kicked in the head. It was like
His head is giant, by the way, and this is coming from a
yeah,
really
it's
big-headed
very hard
guy.
to cover the whole head.
And I'm not and as you guys saw, like I was talking, whether I was talking about coaches or fighter stuff. I'm not a big name dropping guy or whatever. Like I have fun at karate combat or whatever. But yeah, I did see like a lot of fighters there in person or like up close, and I'm not like schmoo. I don't even try to talk to these people because I'm just so weird. I'm like they don't want to be bothered, man. I'm not everyone's trying to bother them. But Volk was by me for a minute, and I just could not get over how just bulbous his head was. Like it was just giant. Like it felt like it was this big. Literally, it felt like it was this big. I'm like, oh, you can't block that thing. It was like
It
I
has a
hope
big
to,
ass head.
I hope Taporia. I gotta go see if Taporia has a good high kick or not. Speaking of which, but but yeah, no, that was actually that was really good, and yeah, a good explanation of it. And I just one thing I'll add, the poetry of it is you'd be like, wait, how is Max Holloway Hanayaya the spectrum? We're talking about Alexander Volkanovski who beat Max. Like, okay, well go look at my Southpaw report for Volk, and Volk liked to do the same thing, right? And I even said that before the first matchup. And in the first matchup, what was one of his early successes? It was off of that from Orthodox, the lifting knee to the right hook, right? And then eventually Islam was able to get a beat on it and both counter and then maybe start to find his own like head kick stuff that he was able to build on for the second fight, right? So it was kind of poetic that their series in 2023 started with Volk using that lifting knee and parlaying off of it, but it ended with Islam using the classic Southpaw version of it, where you're kicking off of it. So it was pretty cool there. All right. Clean up the chat real quick, and then we'll move. Dan Albert says, also, evening do-gooders. Evening to you, Mr. Dan Albert. Jimmy Kudo, body kick, double attack from Southpaw is my vote. You're a big fan of that too, Jimmy Kudo. That's why I love you, sir. Makato Kayagoku, my vote is the Arnold Allen outside calf kick from the open stance, and he gets stank on it. Oh, that was nice. Because Max was going a lot of Southpaw in their fight, wasn't he? Or wait, was he going Orthodox? Well, Max was switching both up like he normally does. But yeah, that's a good shout. Rain Lamina, obscure technique here. Right straight to the body along the fence. You know the technique Ghost talks about all the time. Oh, absolutely. That's a great one for the open stance. Again, there's a lot of stuff against Southpaws that's coming to all our minds, it feels like. Dan Albert says, Volk got shut down a number of grappling/clinch tools, but the bread and butter counters did wonders because Islam has an excellent grasp of his timing. Yeah. Absolutely agree with that. Ronan Curtis says Volk with a normal-sized head is a bantamweight. I agree. I wonder why he wasn't going to bantamweight, because he teased when he first got in the UFC that he could fight all the way down there. But maybe with that head, no go. Go Feno, go Feno, go. I don't know if that's how they said it, but that's how I'm saying it. Like, go ninja, go. Feno doing the damn thing. Matt Pauly in the house. Thursday night with your boy, Dan Tomtime. What's up? All right, we're going to push on. All right, so this one's interesting. But why? Piss poor fight IQ from Jin Karasu. Although I added to give it a little more flexibility. Also, potential funniest moment, because bad fight IQ can lead to really funny moments as well. So I don't want to disqualify those, right? Because when I think of this award, I think of just like Marcin Prachnio and Sam Alvey, right? Marcin Prachnio just running into check right hooks over and over again. Like that's one of the most comical things. I don't know if we're gonna be able to top as far as bad fight IQ moments, like the worst of the worst. Like literally running in to somebody's best punch that they just got you with once, twice, and now 3 times you're done. It was literally the stupidest thing. Like it was just like was like I don't know if there's a Lord of the Rings orc that's programmed for this. What I'm thinking of, but it was like some kind of movie where there's just like a mindless machine that's just, or maybe it's like one of the what's the Will Smith zombie movie? You know, the thing just runs its head against the thing. Like that's what it just felt like. I was like, oh, Marcio Prachnio is like a malfunctioning zombie. What was your interpretation of this category? And what did you come up with, Feno? This was a tough one.
I have 2 title fights here.
Okay.
First of all, and I've been very mad about both because I think both fighters are a lot better than they showed here.
I think I know where you're going. Yes.
Very different reasons though. But yeah, Cyril Gane throwing like a super uncharacteristic straight right, squaring his hips like an idiot against John Jones. It's like, yeah, for fuck's sake. And the other one that I feel a bit worse dragging to the floor, but it's Irene Aldana not throwing anything against Amanda Nunes. For funny thing, that girl that was fighting Norma Dumont, and when he got hurt, she ran straight to the cage.
Yes.
What the fuck was that?
I forgot about it. That's great. I don't even know if that falls under fight IQ, but just for sheer funniness, that's amazing. That's just like remote controller. You drop the remote controller when AFK or something like one of those UFC 1. Remember the UFC 1 glitches? They made like a montage of them. It was like super hilarious.
Just like that. Yeah.
It was bad.
They still have those glitches apparently.
Yes. Okay, so I think so you named my top 2. And it's kind of perfect because I think we're the perfect to talk about this, right? Because everybody, no one is beyond making, bad picks. Not just wrong picks, but there's wrong picks and there's bad picks, right? And you really are setting yourself up for both, even before the fight plays out, whenever you pick against a quote-unquote GOAT. And as we know, no matter how you want to cut it, and no matter how hipster contrarian both me and Feno want to be, many people consider John Jones the GOAT. And obviously many people consider, as for the female side, Amanda Nunes the GOAT. Both me and Feno, for his, Makhachev is an easy pick and all these things we can say, oh, my analysis aged well here. Well, I believe, Feno, I'm not throwing you under the bus. We both picked Gane against Jones. We both picked Aldana against Nunes, right?
Yes, we did.
So not only is it bad enough, because you could argue that even if you end up getting the pick right, you still have to weigh out, was it worth it? For all the abuse you had to take prior for picking, because you can have the best case and you can even eventually be right, but you are going to take so much abuse, so much bias, right, from all the nut-hugging fans to just the people like, what's wrong with you? The only thing to make it worse is that we both know that, like, we weren't saying dump your money on Cyril Gane, dump your money on Aldana. Like, me and Feno weren't saying that. Like, we were well aware we were in the minority. We were well aware that our picks could lose. Like, we weren't crazy. We might have been crazy for picking, but we weren't completely crazy, right? But the thing is, you end up looking completely crazy by sometimes just A, picking against these people in the first place, but B, again, we picked them knowing they could lose, but of course they had to go out there and not just lose, but literally in like the stupidest ways possible. To where guys like us who know their game, who know the game, will pull our hair out, and other people, they won't even notice it. They won't even give you that benefit of the doubt. Like, listen, I think my guy was going to get in the way anyways, but yeah, that was a weird. No, you're not even getting that. They're like, see, that's exactly what was going to happen every time. And now you have to eat that shit and all the analysis that you gave out, or in my case, as well as bets, and just look like a dummy. And
I mean,
worst ways to lose a bet. Worst ways to lose a bet.
It would be better if they both lost, but they lost like doing the things that they usually do.
Yes.
But it's like Cyril Gane has always been so allergic to throwing his right hand naked. Like, he never does that shit. And he throws the ugliest right hand, like, without measuring distance. Like, incredibly bad. And then you have Aldana, who has been in so many wars, and she has lost some like volume-based fights against like Leslie Smith and Shukagian in the past, even though that decision was kind of funky. But one thing you can count on Aldana is that she's going to throw back at the very least, and she did not like at all.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
like it was like if they lost doing what they usually do and the analysis was wrong, it's one thing.
yeah.
But then they go out and they do nothing that they usually do and they lose. So
And it was
it's
the two worst ways too. It's getting drowned out for like a long boring fight where you do absolutely nothing and you're like, what are we doing here? Or you just go and the fight's over quick, but it's not even like Tyson in the '90s quick. Like it's not even entertaining. You're like, what just happened? What the fuck was that? Like they literally like it's almost like they plan like, okay, we're gonna lose in the worst ways. Oh, you take this way and I'll take that way. Like it's like what the like. Yeah, it's hilarious. You can't help but laugh at it. Obviously now, at our picks at the way the fights went. But yeah, Aldana's gonna be mine though because here's my thing is, what also came up was like Jailman and Derek Lewis just holding him down for 5 rounds and not going for a finish, almost like he bet on himself to go to decision. That was brutal. There was Curtis Blades and Sergey Pavlovich on Blades again choosing to go from like one of 3 people who wrestles at heavyweight to be like, you know what? Maybe 3 people's too much for this division. Maybe too many. I'm gonna stick to striking. I know it's gotten me trouble in like 2 fights before the Pavlovich fight. You know, Pavlovich seems like a guy you want to strike with. Uh, and that was just like mind-boggling. And then there's the inverse, okay, where it was Cyril Gane's next fight against Sergey Spivak, and it's Sergey Spivak who's the but why. Like again, Spivak could have lost that, and you know maybe I have to rewatch it. Maybe there's some technical footwork thing in the big cage that Gane was doing that I didn't see. But honestly, Spivak just looked defeated. It was like one of those things where like he came in with whenever a fighter drastically changes their haircut and they look like kind of like a mess, like me in the last 2 podcasts, like it's a bad sign. Like pull your money, hedge out your bets if you're betting on him. Like it's bad. As I remember seeing that look on Spivak's face in that Paris France show, and he was just like showing up, like he looks all like at the check-in station, his head's all shaved. I'm like, what did they do to this guy? Did they feed him some shit or something? What's going on? Like, and like he just like froze and like he had like weird like Billy Madison, like not Billy Madison, like not Happy Gilmore, whatever the football Adam Sandler movie is. Like when he finally did decide to rush, it was like he looked like Adam Sandler's character in that movie going for a tackle, Bobby Boucher. Like it was insane. But the common thread, Feno, for all this bad fight IQ samples, heavyweights. All heavyweight fights. For sure. The only non-heavyweight that came on my list, and I was rewatching the fight, speaking of Marcin Prachnio, king of this list, was a guy he fought because it was shout out. We actually got Thick Willie said on the broadcast earlier this year when he fought William Knight, and of course it was like William Knight's 4th loss, so they cut him. But William Knight is practically a heavyweight, so yeah, it's practically all heavyweights. It almost like I'm not trying to shit on heavyweights, but folks, this isn't a coincidence, right, Feno?
And also Aldana versus Nunes is like the heavyweight of
true.
Of women's.
Yeah, that is true. But just because it's the only selection that wasn't a heavyweight fight, I went with that Aldana. So, I'm an Aldana fan like you. You know, I'm not even a hater. I got love for Aldana too.
I think it was like a mental thing. Obviously, it was like bad performance, and it was double disappointing because like Alexa just had like the complete opposite of a performance, where she was like insanely game. Like she won that Shevchenko first fight mostly on being game over the technicalities and all that thing. And then Aldana like did not show up at all to the fight. And I feel bad. I feel bad for her. I'm glad she came back with a good win in a great fight in her last one. So.
Wrestle Jamia says Matthias Mendonca versus Nate Maness. I remember that was kind of a weird one too, almost like a Gone Jones-esque, right? Wasn't it like Maness gets the sub or something? I forget. Like it was a weird. Mendonca was like pretty heavily favored.
Oh yeah. There was also, I don't know if this was this year, but Willie Cat fought is it Danny Munoz his name, or
Johnny
like
Munoz?
Johnny Munoz? Yeah, he
Yeah.
tried to wrestle like the whole fight. It was so weird to me.
Yeah, that was
Like
that
he
was
was
really
losing
weird.
all the wrestling exchanges, and he kept going for the takedowns. It was like very weird performance. I'm like sure that he was injured or something. It was a very weird performance.
Yep. You know, I got to mention this one from our guy Dan Albert, though, Fenyo. Dracus Duplessis takedown fail on Derek Brunson or the Torres Maeda double heel hook tribute is a serious contender for things I saw this year. I love that reference, Dan. And yeah, we definitely have to mention just the stupid chaos that ended in a very sensible way with the corner throwing the towel in, by the way, for MMA standards. But that was just a stupid bananas fight. Anything to say on that one, Fenyo?
On which one? Sorry.
Dracus Duplessis versus takedown fail on Derek Brunson. Just that whole fight in general.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
He just had to do it again.
it's funny because he's failing upwards. But yeah, Dracus is another fighter. Like you could just like clip any part of his fight. Like probably like 80% of his fights would qualify for. Like, why did he do this here? He's still winning.
Yeah. You wonder how he wins fights. Like,
Jin Karasu, but why? I stole that from Jack Slack. Okay, you guys are gonna get me in trouble from Jack Slack. Are you? Am I gonna have to change these? I don't need I don't need gimmick infringement. We already got my guy. We already got the sweet intros from Rios and Truesdale. I'll cut it off there. But we'll see if we change that wording for next year. Ronan Curtis, Drake is falling over and pulling people on top of him is a classic. It's very classic.
he's pulling him out.
I actually felt like that today. I went for a crappy double that I wasn't really in position to get, and we ended up in like a weird rolling scramble off of it. And like at a certain point, I felt like I was getting guillotine countered. So I ended up just making sure not just to pull to my back, but to pull at least into like a half guard with on the right side to make sure that I'm safe from getting choked. And then I just do my half guard get up to get back up. But yeah, I felt like Dracus. I was like,
other day. I was showing the other day that step around takedown that Dagestani dude hit on Cody Durden. What's his name?
oh yeah.
And I really want to try that takedown, but I'm sure like I'm going to end up on my back a lot. Like
yeah, I know what you mean.
Because you gotta like go first on the step around. That's like the big difference with the outside trip.
Yeah, you really got to commit on those ones. Reyes and Truesdale. Dan, do you know my but why is Mackenzie Dern versus Jessica Andrade equal bragging about your distance control that she learned from Cejudo, then fighting with her chin in the air and getting starched? Yeah, you know what?
Tagir Ulanbekov, yeah.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. I like that Mackenzie Dern versus Andrade shout because that was almost the underdog spot. She lost multiple times as an underdog as well. But that was just one of those spots where it was like, okay, this is the perfect spot. The overhyped person versus the person not getting enough love.
Yeah, and also like it was like Darren leaving Parillo, and immediately like she does all the MMA stupid shit that all fighters do.
Yes.
Like the crazy kicks, the changing stances, like. Okay,
Yep.
I don't have a boxing coach anymore. I'm like a gimmick MMA fighter now.
Yeah, and that was another one where I was calling from the beginning. Like, you guys realize like, she wasn't taking on a short notice like Mitchell, but the red herring, is that even used properly here, was that she left Perillo's camp. That was the big red. That was the one thing tethering her to anything. Like, Pepe Silva, nice to see Dan smiling and laughing again. Happy holidays. Thank you, Pepe. I appreciate you, man. Hope you and yours are doing well. Dan Albert, Feno and I podcasted enough to stop caring how much we got things wrong. It's totally fine, so long as we're able to assess it afterwards. Unfortunately, stupid things happen. That really well said. Yeah, really well said. I should take that advice probably more to heart, to be honest. But yeah, we're able to laugh at it now, though. That's why it's funny. Last one before I move on, I'll catch up on the rest of you guys later. Makoto Kayagoku. But why? Amanda Lemos not preparing to wrestle and using her regular game against a fighter that fights like water. Who's that? Who's this?
Zhang Weili.
Zhang Weili. Oh, yeah. Duh. Just thinking of them. Yeah, that minus 500 looking at. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not much to say about that one. All right. I'll squeeze one more. Pepe Silva. The Gon/Jones fight had scripted vibes to me. Yeah, I mean, I think even people who like John Jones and picked him were like, "What? Wow, okay." Like, especially people who were smart and realized what they're looking at. Even they were like, "Okay, that was kind of weird. That was all right."
Yeah, I mean, Gun is not a good grappler, but
right.
But we know he grapples a little bit. Like
Yeah.
he submits people sometimes. Like it was embarrassingly bad. Like the dude completely froze. Someone. Oh yeah, Russell Jamie is shouting the Kron Gracie against Jordan. That one is like. Dude.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's really deserving. That's a good shot. I mean, not surprising, sadly, at the same time though. But but for judging it on face value, absolutely that deserves to be shouted and perhaps an award.
Especially because Kron looked promising against Cub Swanson, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, if he fought that same fight, he was still going to lose against Jordan, but at least it was going to be a fight. Like he did not try anything on that one.
Yeah, Jordan. I also looked at Jordan as well for a possible underdog of the year, but I'm like, no, he wasn't an underdog that much. I just counted him out a bunch and was wrong on him a bunch. I feel like I'm always wrong about Jordan. But moving on, speaking of Makatsu Kyogoku, Best Chinese Fighter Award. I just think this is just funny because it's just random, and it might piss people off just because, why are you giving an award to a Chinese fighter? And you know what? With all the strays, and I get it. I do my own, regional stereotypes when I talk about MMA. I think we all do to a certain extent. We try to do it respectfully and hopefully non-racistly. But the Asian scene, especially the Chinese scene, definitely it's growing. It's still developing. But even more developed scene, air quote developed scenes, like the Japanese scene, gets disrespected with classic stuff like, oh, they don't do well in North America. The Japanese don't travel well. They're like Asian pears. They bruise. I don't know. You hear all the classic like people. I've heard people just straight up and it's all friends of mine, like fucking Asian, and it's friends of mine that'll say this shit too. So it's just one of those things where I don't think we realize how we're being. And some people will just straight up use slurs. I don't think they realize it's slurs. They'll be like, "These fucking Chinamen," all this crazy. Shout out to Cheeto Vera, by the way. I found that tweet, by the way, where I quote tweeted it with the Big Lebowski. You okay, Ben? You're all itchy over here, buddy, huh? The Big Lebowski. Chinaman is not the issue, dude. But also, so I kept it in here, and I actually have a legit. I'm not just gonna go with Zhang Weili, although I feel like this could be the Zhang Weili award, especially because it's the Zhang Gang in my chat. So be careful, Feno. If you slander Zhang Weili, they'll come after you, buddy. I got to give you that warning. So obviously I want to give her that respect. So hopefully I won't get what's the word? What happened to Captain Cook and a lot of those genocidal maniacs when they get killed by their own crew? Hopefully that doesn't happen to me here. But I'm gonna go with the guy that I'm studying right now for potential prospect list, and that's Tian Hao Feng, who's fought a bunch this year. It's hard to track a lot down on this guy. I'm in the process of right now. But he recently. Sorry, I got it pulled up right here. Yeah, he recently scored a big win over a former Pancrase flyweight champ, Miki. This is a brutal flying knee KO. Capoza posted it. And yeah, this is 14th straight win, 8th in 2023 alone. So go look up that highlight, and I'd say go look him up, but I've got a couple tabs on him right now, actually, and it's hard to find stuff, social and video. Not a ton, but yeah, he's a guy that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and you should too. Did you come up with anything for this category, Feno?
No, I mean, I just went straight to Zhang Weili.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, she got one, folks. Don't kill us. She got one.
But I mean, it's been very interesting, like trying to make something a bit more serious about the meme award. But I mean, Chinese development from Chinese fighter has been very interesting because we've seen very different metas translating. I don't know if you remember the early UFC Chinese fighters were mostly grapplers. And I'm guessing because the strikers were still staying in sand and kickboxing over there in China, and it was the guys from jiu-jitsu gyms that were translating over. And now we have mostly these Sanda fighters that are very big strikes with very athletic wrestling, and it's a it's a cool style to see. It's different from what we've seen. Even though a lot of them train in the USA and all that, they still have those. They have somewhat of a style, and I think that's very cool.
Definitely. I want to shout out before we push on a random Tommy Tohold bit that I feel like they really missed out on. It was back when they were doing like a Tough China or something like that back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And Tommy Tohold had a bit where he did his Dana White character. And he's like, Tough China's going to be the new thing. In fact, we're even bringing you a Chinese Dana White. Yep, Chinese Dana White is the shit. Chinese Dana White has already been hard at work. And I'm like, I'm just picturing, like, they should have made a Chinese Dana White. How funny would that have been, you know? Like, it wouldn't look any, it would just be like a bald Chinese guy. He probably would, like, resemble, like, probably like, Kim Jong-il in stature. I know I'm citing a Korean here, folks, but he probably resemble more like a Kim Jong-il, but just have his head shaved. They'd call him Chinese Dana White. He's really from Singapore. His name's Hank, but it's all influence. There's no real media now because if you guys noticed, we're all just shifting to influencer culture. That's who's covering and calling. It's all influencers now. That might as well just have like a Chinese Dana, like a Hasbullah. You parade him around, he just slaps some people. Just like the real
Like
Dana White.
Like Chinese Elon Musk and Chinese Barack Obama. Have you seen those?
Yes. Just go in with the gimmick. Open your PI, have him there to cut the ribbon.
They never had like tough again in China.
No. I remember that guy Tian Tranzong. I forget what his name was, but that was like the one Chinese fighter. He had like a WEC fight and like one UFC fight or something too.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting sidetracked here, but shouts for that one. All right, best southpaw of the year, pushing it forward. I will get back to you guys. Don't worry in the chat. Keep it going. Best southpaw of the year. So we've probably already covered a lot of this crossover and whatnot. I want you to go first on this one because I don't want to already have burned a choice here for you.
Which award, sorry?
The southpaw of the year, the southpaw of 2023.
Oh, okay.
Who's your southpaw of the 2023?
I think based just on a single performance, just because of the difficult style matchup and because of the application of the open stance to alleviate the troubling of the matchup, and because it's such a different fight from the first, because this is a rematch. Actually, a trilogy fight. I'm going to go with Leon Edwards myself.
Nice.
Just because of the Usman 3 fight. Just a very impressive performance and just excellent application of open stance tactics to deal with a complicated style matchup, despite Usman being like physically diminished by now, and not that much as we saw against Shimaev. Like, he's still a tough customer nowadays. Usman is. So I wouldn't count him out. And I think the performance from Leon Edwards, where, again, I think he won every round. Very impressive, very impressive. Other than Leon, it gotta be Islam, right? If it's not Leon, it is Islam.
Those are obviously the two choices that make the most sense. My first pick was actually Leon Edwards here, and I feel bad because I had Leon Edwards was in the running for a lot. Obviously, the southpaw technique, he was right there for me for that, right? So I feel bad, but I feel less bad because you're giving him the award. So I went with a kind of under the radar pick, which is a little key hint for possible awards as well. This may or may not be somebody who you might see who gets my under the radar award, which is arguably it's more appropriate this fighter for an under the radar award. But he's still my southpaw of the year because even though it's more than defensible, and with Leon, he was my first choice, so absolutely agree. But you're right. You probably would have to base it more off that single performance than the Covington performance, which probably not as bad as like casuals who criticize him said, obviously, but like you know what I'm saying. But no, I went with just a real dedicated southpaw who just and Islam has put in the fear of God in people, maybe with his left kick, But you want those like classic like southpaw, like the Crow Cop kickers, right? Those are the southpaws who kind of got a lot of people in MMA. Even Crow Cop got how many people in MMA, right? And this is a weird because that's a big Eastern European guy. Now I'm going to go to a little brown man, but I'm going to go with Jonathan Martinez, baby, the Dragon.
Okay.
Jonathan Martinez. He is going to be spoiler alert. He's going to be an underrated, under the radar fighter of the year for an outlet that I write for. And basically based on he not just because he's got a cool southpaw style, but just like Makhachev, being so stereotyped with his wrestling and grappling, and he's out here being a full-fledged southpaw striker. Jonathan Martinez has been for quite a while, not just this year, for quite a while, even like going back to like the Frankie Saenz fight, the other Georgian guy, Zavalishvili, I think he fought. Like he's been able to wrestle for quite a bit. That's been kind of an underrated skill of Jonathan Martinez, defensively and even offensively when he needs it. And I think because of that and his southpaw stylings, he is just quietly a difficult matchup. I think he's only ranked number 12 in the UFC rankings. But you look up at the top 10, and as deep and as dangerous as bantamweight is, he definitely could fit that dark horse as far as a guy who, despite maybe being underdog odds to a lot of people in the top 10, on paper, has a decent chance of being quietly a difficult stylistic fight, which is, I know, things me and you like to look for, how we kind of break our matches down. And, he has that really kind of ugly fight, but he's not, he was a big underdog. I was there live, drunk off my ass, cheering for him, and the Davalishvili Peter Yan card. By the way, I missed my joke for Chinese Fighter of the Year. I was like, well, since Peter Yan and Kevin Lee and Andrea Lee had such a bad years, I can't go with my usual Chinese fighters. You usually think about the Yans and the Lees. But it's kind of my fantasy Jewish fight league joke. Rosenstruck and Semmelsberger. I forget. Oh, Olberg, Carlos Olberg. Clearly Jewish fighters. Rosenstruck and Olberg, right? KGB Lee. KGB Lee. I don't think she realizes the sickle thing. Like Petrovsky. They're probably people, if you ask them, probably hate communism, yet they have it. Anyway, but there's some relations there. I think Peter Yan's part Chinese, right? There's some relation when you get deep into Russia down there. So I missed that joke. But yeah, sorry. Back to Jonathan Martinez. Yeah, he has that. He can wrestle a bit, And then, of course, Adrian Yanez. That fight. I know. I thought there were people like me who were picking Martinez, and people were questioning why he was favored, but we could see that it was a tough stylistic matchup, especially for Yanez at this point of his career, where he was at. I think that was maybe not. They might have thought it was an easy fight for him, maybe somebody, the matchmakers or something, but it was not. And he doesn't just do the guess to the body or the head, but he also goes to the legs with brutality. I mean, 2 leg kick stoppages. I know one of them came just last year in October against Cub, but he got one this year in 2023 as well. Was able to utilize his underrated grappling, even as that.
Was Martinez versus Said this year?
Yeah, that was that Las Vegas card.
That's very good.
Yeah,
that's a very good win.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 really big, two big wins, against some decent names that get some respect in the division. And I know, it's much more justified to go Makhachev or Edwards. Edwards is my first pick for what it was worth. He was my main front runner here. He's probably the most deserving, so I'm glad Feno went with him. But I just wanted to give some love to the Dragon.
Yeah, and if you want to go like super racist, you can give the Chinese one to Martinez because he's the Dragon. So.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Oh my God. I was like, Paul Feller the Irish Dragon? I was like, okay, that's definitely like that's something that like would have been my screen name on my AOL days back in the 90s. Actually, by the way, my AOL screen name was Dynasty Dragon, but it wasn't because I was like trying to be Asian. Dynasty was actually a skate company, and when I was like creating my passwords and stuff, like the internet wasn't a big deal at that. That was like the first internet, right? AOL for a lot of us. I was like, this shit's not gonna last. I was like, what's my name? I look at my shirt and it said Dynasty, and there was an outline of the dragon. It was a skateboarding company, and I'm like, Dynasty Dragon. And I'm like, that's my name. And I was like, oh wow, I'm really playing into the Asian stereotypes. Well, I'm doing martial arts. It's not good. But yeah, I gotta come clean.
Skate brands were such a big thing back in the day.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, oh yeah, dude.
Like I had like 15 independent t-shirts, like independent t-shirts.
Yes,
like,
me too.
And I barely skated.
Me too. I actually was pretty into it in a lot of respects. for a while, but as far as skating wise, I sucked and I didn't skate a lot. Like I think it was like
I
a
skated
fake
for like years.
a fakey shove it, pop shove it was my best trick, and a board slide was the only grind I could do on a box or curb. It was bad.
I was even worse than that.
I couldn't
I
kickflip.
used
I
to
couldn't heel flip.
I used to ride like how do you call those scooters? Like racers or whatever you call them.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to ride those a lot.
Oh
And
wow.
I wore like DC shoes for like 3 years straight too. So
Oh, I love skateboarder
they,
shoes, man. Yeah, I could talk skater shoes too, like certain designs. The
and
Kriegers.
I'm wearing like a Vans t-shirt
Yeah,
like
there we go. Yeah, nice, nice. I love. I just always loved skateboarding and like skaters like Rodney Mullen and stuff and whatnot. So there's that. All right. Let's get through these. David Clark, corner person / moment of the year. So obviously, I think they also included Pat Barry when they suggested this. This was from who suggested this? The David Clark of the year. I don't have it written down here. Whoever might have suggested that one. I think. Oh, you know what it was? It was it's a dude on Twitter. I think his name's M Boys. M Boys on Twitter suggested this one, and obviously I do my David Clark impersonation. Like, you gotta fight, goddammit! And he had like last year, you would have had that UFC San Diego show where he was just going crazy. He's just like, if you hurt me, and he's like, he almost hits the ring car girl like that one where he's like, you gotta fight. Like that's what obviously these are for. But it's weird. Devin Clark did fight this year, but he didn't let his father in the corner. So immediately we get no David Clark, right? Um, Rose Namajunas, we didn't have any crazy Rose performances for Pat Barry. I know. And then when Pat Barry did show up, he's ironically doing a really good job with Alonzo Menafield right now, which I didn't
that
see
was so
coming.
weird. That's so weird because I've never thought much of Pat when he's in Rose's corner,
Right.
but when he's in Alonso's corner, he's actually good.
Yeah. When he's again. Remember how I said how
Maybe
Gamble.
he gets too emotional for Rose. I don't know, but I was very surprised in the two crude fights and now in the Jacoby fight. Pat Barry actually good on Alonso Menifield's corner.
Yeah, I know, and that also it sucked because not only does it ruin that joke, but it also ruins the joke of like, remember when I was saying how MMA gamblers, how like I kept comparing them to like Jared Fogle or like pedophiles essentially because they love it, the younger the better. Like I was gonna be like MMA gamblers pick fighters to support the same way that Pat Barry picks fighters to support. Like I was gonna, but now I can't say it. No, I'm just kidding. I can't
Yeah,
even say it.
Menifield is not even young. So
Actually, you know what? He's younger than Rose at this point. I think still, right? So
is
maybe
he?
maybe
I
he's quietly one of those dudes who looks like he's older, but he's like in his 20s still. Menafield, where it's like, dude, it looks like you've got you look like deep in your 30s with two marriages in the rear, and you look at the
no,
stat, it's like 28, 29.
he's
No.
36.
Oh, he's 36. Okay, maybe I'm thinking of
Yeah,
someone else. Wow. Okay. Wow.
he started his MMA career super late. I don't know what
Yeah.
he used to do before, but
Well, maybe that's what allows Pat to focus with him. that,
oh,
that,
he
that
was
dynamic's not
of
there.
course, of course, he was a football player.
Oh my gosh, Minifield. I wonder why that was so weird because he left like a good structured camp too, Fortis. But he's doing good now, so shouts to him. But yeah, back to this award. There wasn't, and who's that other guy? His name's Eric something, but he is OSP's corner man. He's always doing weird stuff like listen to the floor, feel it from the floor. Come on, Vance, feel it from the floor. And you hear like smart guys like Brian Stan going, yeah, sometimes fighters just need to hear things, It doesn't need to be the most technical. And then they're trying to cover up because you could tell they've got a rapport with this guy.
I believe we had Goggins in Tony's corner, right?
Yeah, that feels like the easy pick for many reasons. Recency, even without the recency bias. But who did you have? I have a cheeky take on this pick. I kind of bent it a little bit, so I want you to go first.
I was thinking on Leon's coach, but that was last year,
Yeah,
and that was amazing. That was
yeah,
amazing.
and
He's kind of crying,
yeah,
but
yeah. And again, a lot of the crazies have died down too. Like Henry Hoof's not as violent as he's not losing his shit anymore. Like he's matured. Although sometimes I I almost wanted to track it down, like with Brendan Allen. Like I was saying last time I broke him down, you could tell that Brendan loses focus a lot, and that Henry knows because like in some of the fights, it'll be like kind of quiet, like in the Apex or whatever, and not a lot's going on, and you'll just hear Hoof go, "Focus, Brendan." Just like losing it. Focus. Like, he's just like clenching his teeth.
But Henry has gotten so much better in the psychology side.
Oh, yeah, he's way better.
He's come a long way since the don't give up,
don't quit. Where's the rumble line now? R.I.P. But yeah, the grays and the glasses. Henry's really matured out. But my point is there wasn't a lot this year, so
yeah. I think Goggins, he was screaming his heart out.
That's a good pick.
Yeah.
So do you want to know what I ended up with? It wasn't a corner man, but again, this is corner man / corner moment, right? So I actually had to go to a neutral corner and not to a corner man. Because this was just a really random, like, what the fuck one. This wasn't, I mean, it kind of is funny because it's like, not in a million years would I expect this or expect it again. But it was back at UFC 294 when Victor Henry gets sent to the neutral corner for a clear low blow. And we get the corner audio. We get the same mics that we do in the corner, right? For the doctors and the refs, right? And we hear this ref who had a performance that evening, by the way, right? He got the Johnny Walker Ankalaev fight canceled. He asked him, "Where are you at? The desert?" Nope, this fight's over. He straight up gaslighted one of the most direct nut shots. I mean, even if it was a grazing shot, the balls to gaslight a fighter, even on a grazing shot. This was a direct hit, and he was just...
Victor Henry is a tough ass.
Yeah. This was just... I couldn't believe what I was seeing as far as in any corner. So
It didn't hit your balls.
Yeah, it did. And he looks at it like, what? No, he hit me square.
It was all balls.
It was all balls.
All dick and balls.
It was all dick and balls, yes. And they're having this conversation. And then again, the commentary having to like clean it up, but also give their opinion because they can't believe it either. They're like, what are we seeing? It was all dick and balls.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
So I gotta go with that one. All right. Before we clean up the basic ones of the year, I'm just gonna do a little bit of chat cleanup, and then we'll get out of here. I don't want to. This is already running really long. So just a couple here. Jimmy Kudo says Tajir Ulanbekov is what Feno was talking about earlier. Yeah, he caught that one. Yep, that's right. I know that because my boy Ghost loves Tajir. Sumiderji, Makoto Kayagoki. This is a shout to our favorite fighter. We know who that is. Song Yadong deserves it for how hot his body is. All right, okay, there we go. Song Yadong, baby. By the way, hey, you know what? Yadong, let's do. You know what? He is not just breaking the Asian stereotypes in you know, in the handsomeness and all those things that we don't get credit for as much as we should. But how about Song Yadong just being explosive? You know what I'm saying? Like, because Asians always get unassuming, and of course, shout out to the Jack Slack podcast, right? It tells the black guys to get explosive. Like Song Yadong can even that out, you know. Let's give the black athletes more credit for their skill, God forbid. And hey, God forbid, pump the Asian athletes up a little bit. Give us the explosive. Make us feel a little dangerous.
A lot of explosive Asian fighters this year. I mean, we have Song, we have Zhang Weili.
Yeah, she's explosive.
And also what's the name of the Japanese wrestler? That monster guy. Rinya Nakamura.
Yeah, that guy's really...
He's a fucking beast.
Southpaw 2, there we go. Southpaw 2, that's right. I think naming it the Whaley Award would be awesome. We may have to go there, Makato. James Kendrick, I'm down with that name. Name it the Zhang Weili Award for the hardest working Asian fighter. All right, that I like that. We'll lean more toward that next year. Chinese Dana White, that's Chatri, right? Yeah, I get that. That's definitely one. Elon Ma is amazing. Oh my gosh. All right. Chat's great. Keep it up. I'm going to get back to you guys. I just want to get back to these awards. All right. We're going to close it out here with the normal ones, and then we're going to close it out with heartbreak and feel good. So we'll end on a positive note. So Fighter of the Year male. I'll go first because I already announced it on Twitter. I just went with Alessandro Pantoja here. Obviously, I'm a big Pantoja fan. He could have been the most reliable dog for me. He was an underdog against a fighter he already beat. You know, it was really classic Robbie Lawler vibes. UFC 189, Robbie Rory too. You know, he was fighting for his respect that night. Co-main event on one of the best cards of the year, UFC 290, where Robbie Lawler was also on as well. By the way, a lot of good fights. Volk Rodriguez, we talked about, was on that card. A lot of good fights on that one. Third Reichus, Duplessis taking out my boy Bobby Nux. but yeah, which we're not doing card of the year, but that will be my card of the year, and Pantoja is my fighter of the year for reasons I've always stated till you guys are blue in the face. You guys know I love Pantoja. What do you got, Feno?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good argument for Islam again, but especially but I think Islam maybe next year because I think Charles didn't show up too much in that fight.
Yeah.
I mean, he exposed the worst parts of the matchup.
Right.
And Islam didn't look that great fighting a smaller guy in Volkanovski. I mean, I rate that win highly, but
Sure.
I think Pantoja, because he's like a fighter that the UFC did not want to give the title shot, even though he deserved it for so long.
Yeah.
And then also, like, they give him like a super unfair rematch. Unfair in the sense that I think fights are so like volatile that I think like fighters should not rematch as soon as very soon. And I think the Royval title shot was like not very justified, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the UFC wanted to get rid of Pantoja.
Yep.
Pantoja speaks. I think the UFC dislikes the Brazilians that speak a little English more than those that do not speak English at all, because they show up to like a press conference and they speak in their broken English, and they do not get a lot of engagement. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like the deck stacked against Pantoja, and Pantoja, who deserved the title shot like super long ago, especially after walking over Perez like he did.
Yeah.
And two great performances, like two great performances from a veteran, and winning those like decisions against the cardio machines that they were expecting him to lose. So it was amazing. Yeah.
And say what you will about the cardio, right? But the fact is, you could argue that he is arguably an unheralded 5-round fighter. We were worried about it at first,
for sure.
But you could argue that he's an unheralded 5-round fighter because we saw two different style matchups, two different difficulties, and he ends up getting through and beating. Wow.
And arguably won the 5th round on both fights. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he was more tired than Royval and Moreno, but they couldn't take advantage of that.
Yep. I'm gonna try to plug something in so I don't run out of power. So who ends up being your fighter of the year? Is it Makhachev or Pantoja?
Oh, I gotta go with Pantoja.
My man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because it's true. And not that Makhachev doesn't deserve it. Oh, we got some power, hopefully. Cool. All right, we're going to keep the stream alive. I just plugged in some power.
Leon was on the ring as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Leon deserving. And we gave it to, we as an MMA junkie gave it to Sean Strickland. Obviously, I'm from Extreme Couture. We're not doing coach.
Strickland too, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will, man. That crazy underdog performance to beat Adesanya. You know, I don't blame anybody for that, but at the same time, you know, these are guys that the brave Brazilians, the Brazilian war horses, as I call it. You know, like it was a feel good moment, like when Glover or Do Bronx won. These guys aren't supposed to win. You know, they're past their primes. You know, so to speak, as far as miles go, they all have a lot of miles by the time they get there. They're not supposed to get there, and they all seem like really good salt of the earth based dudes. You know. Charles Do Bronx, you know, helping the favela communities all the time with charities. Glover just being one of the best sportsmen probably we've ever seen in the octagon, and just like a feel good character, like everybody's favorite uncle and dad, you know. And then you got Pantoja, who's super based. Remember when they did that reaction, that stupid thing where all the engagement media was just making engagement media off of Ian Gary and not covering the fights. It was all about Ian Gary's wife that whole week, and they were asking all the fighters, instead of promoting the fighters who they had for a stacked card, they were using their time with the fighters to ask about Ian Gary's wife. And of all people, which I got to give credit to, Patty the white natty Pimblett, baby, the baddie, the future daddy. It was only him and Pantoja were the only people that kept it classy and were like, and I can't remember what Patty said, but Patty said like, I hope you're well. Oh, I think it was Ferguson actually said something classy, I think too. And then Pantoja, they asked Pantoja, they're like, and he was just, Pantoja was just like, I forget, he said something like, whoa, wait a minute, you're talking about family? People, you want to make sure you keep your teeth if you talk about family. I'm like, that's based as fuck. It's like threatening the people to lose, that they're going to lose their teeth if they talk about family. I'm like, that's what's up, Pantoja. Fucking tell him. Just cold. And he's not even trying to be. He's just so based, And it's just like these guys, with these fighters, when they make it, I just feel like, like I said, and I said it when we were doing our voting. Because I voted for Pantoja. Full disclosure, I don't always vote for Extreme Couture people, folks. Believe it or not. But I was just like, if we're not giving the award to the people who shouldn't be here, they make it against all odds, both in life, in the octagon, and the politics that tie both those things together. Like, they have it all against them, and they make it. Like, if we're not celebrating that, if we're not happy for those people, what the fuck are we even doing here? Are we just lining up to, and even me who's saying this, are we just lining up to give Makhachev awards? I gave Makhachev 2 awards on this, and he was up for like 4, right? He was really close to getting like 4. I gave him 2. You know what I'm saying? I'm not hating or whatever, but it's just like, I was like, he's deserving. I'm not saying he's not deserving, but I'm like, do I want to just be another person lining up in that already long queue that's always going to be there for the Makhachevs and the Khabibs of the world, right? Or am I going to give it to the underrated dudes who are, probably not going to hold on to it for long? As happy as I was for Charles, it was nip and tuck how long he was going to hold on to that belt for, right? And I kind of feel the same way with Pantoja, and Pantoja feels the same way. And I hate that people use that against them and be like, oh, well, flyweight and Pantoja is not impressive because the division sucks because their champion's not good because anybody could beat him. I'm like, or it's just an amazing division and anybody could beat anybody. It's your perspective there,
Yeah, it is a very competitive division, and yeah, I mean, you can argue that it has seen better days, but
right.
But I think at the very top, it's still elite. Like, you can say that some fighters are flawed in some ways, but they're still like super dangerous and well put together fighters, like way better than on the heavyweight classes.
Yep. Female fighter of the year. Who'd you go with for this one?
I think the logical pick here is Alexa.
Yep.
But I have 2 interesting ones to add to the mix.
Right.
Non-champions, I would say Blanchfield, especially the win against Andrade, very impressive. And even though I think if you run it back with Tyler, Tyler could win that fight. But I still think Blanchfield showed a lot in the hard department, in the cardio department. Because she was getting outstruck like badly, but then she took advantage of the opportunity she had on that third. And I think Tyler won that fight, to be honest. No, I'm not sure. I think I scored for Tyler the third round.
Yeah.
I'm not super sure, but yeah, I mean, but still, I am very impressed with Blanchfield, especially because how young she is in her career, and she looks very composed. The cardio looks great, physicality. And also shout out to Mayra Bueno Silva.
Yeah, nice, yeah.
I mean, she finished Holy Holm on a on a Holy Holm main. She saved us from a Holy Holm main event.
I feel good. Yeah, I feel good about Mayra Bueno Silva because that was one of the ones where like, I'm not, the biggest. I'm not. I don't think I would call myself a WMA hater, but I'm not the biggest like fan either, right? It's like I'm like come see, come sa. But like there are fighters that get me excited. I'm not afraid to say so. Mayra Bueno Silva, I think I put a flag on her even pre her draw, which I think was like a majority draw, which I still think was bullshit. Like it's the most crazy draw you could see where one fighter essentially beats the shit out of another fighter against Montana De La Rosa. But and she was training. She's not an American top team now with Bahumpa, but at that time she was actually training with Dubronx and those guys. And I imagine she went to ATT just because there's not a lot of women, I imagine, at shootbox, and there's a ton of women at ATT and Brazilians, so it made sense. But that's what kind of caught my eye because she was from that camp, and you could see the pieces together. It's just she had to kind of put it together, and she still is in that process, but it's coming together. And yeah, she made me some money this year. I'm glad. I'm glad I was able to cash my betting tickets before her home outcome got overturned on some BS.
Also, she kind of beat Manon Fiorot in their fight.
Yeah, that was a fight that was quietly close than people realize. I remember doing the study for Fiorot, I think, and it was amazing because like I think I picked Rose Namajunas of all times to beat her via a head kick because for as much as kicking and karate style striking that Fiorot is known for, she's like almost been head kicked and corralled in a head kick so much. It's kind of weird how like she's got like a complete blind spot for that. But I went with Grasso for the obvious reasons. I'm glad we spent time talking about the other fighters though. I think they deserve that time. Also, shout out to Tatiana Suarez, who is posed to do some good things.
Yeah,
Southpaw
great
as well.
comeback by Suarez.
Southpaw as well. Okay.
Yan Xiaonan too.
Yep. Yan Jiao. Yeah. Absolutely. Yan Jiaonan. Yan Jiaonan. Fight of the year. This one was easy for me, but there was a decent amount we could shout here. I think. I went with Pantoja Moreno too. Again, I'm not gonna keep waxing on this fight, but for me that was just the fight of the year on the card of the year. It went to decision, but it just had everything that I love, and I feel confident with that pick. But there's plenty that you could pick for. What did you land on, Feno?
Yeah, I have three. I think the one I'm going to the one I'm going with at the end is Pantoja Moreno. And I wanted to shout out two smaller fights. But yeah, I mean, Kutateladze versus Evan Brenner, and Borshchev versus what's his name? I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, the Borshchev fight versus Saliko.
Yep.
Yeah,
good.
those three were my absolute favorite. I especially want to talk about the Borshchev Saliko and the Brenner Kutateladze because they weren't like super high stakes.
Yes.
And they still had me like at the edge of my seat. Like they were so exciting there. Yeah. I love when I was invested in those fights because I've watched plenty of tape. I've seen many fights of all four fighters. But it's different when it's a title shot.
Yeah.
And these were like 3 rounds and these guys went to hell and back on those fights. Very, very entertaining fights. So I want to shout those. And obviously, like a lot of people enjoyed Makhachev versus Volkanovski 1. I liked it, especially I think that one was one of those fights that is a lot better live. And then on rewatch, you realize that it's not that good. I think that's kind of a hot take, but yeah. I mean, if I had to go with one, it's gotta be Pantoja Moreno because it was like round 2. It looked like Moreno is going to take over, like
right.
And then Pantoja came back hard, and it was like great fight from end to finish. It was amazing.
Yeah, it really was a fantastic fight where like even though you could argue scores and everybody does in MMA, I feel like even that didn't really seem to assault people. It was such a good fight that people didn't even care if they thought one way or the other, which I obviously am biased, but I also thought that very justifiable. The right person won. Great shouts as well, by the way. And then the only thing I was going to shout, we already shouted, was Van and Borjas. That was kind of an underrated fight too.
Oh yeah,
I know our guy Kyle Mack from Combat Chronicles loves that. I'm stoked for his stuff too. Shouts to him. All right. Knockout of the year. I want you to go first on this one, Feno. What made you knockout of the year? Any recency bias? Anything from earlier in the year?
I have two
okay.
Main candidates. First is Bonfim versus Terence McKinney.
Nice.
Yeah, that was amazing. Great performance too. And the other one is just super obvious and with recency bias. Emmett versus Bryce.
Yeah.
And also, I wanna give a shout out to Cody Garbrandt versus Kelleher too. I love that one.
Was a good
if
one.
we're going with recency, Yeah, that one was great too. Like face planted, super bad.
You didn't burn any of my picks, surprisingly. I was obviously the front runner, and I'm not a recency bias guy, but I said this on the podcast because it was so crazy, and others were saying it that had no betting interest or anything like that. So I know it wasn't my bias. But yes, that was Emmett. And and Mitchell and I went to rewatch it. It was like your classic right hand, and it was brutal. I don't want to say it was less brutal the second time because that sounds both wrong but also obvious at the same time to say that. But I had to just to get it fresh in my head to watch with the other one to see which won out, and ultimately what won out. Technique wise, it was cool. I don't know if it would have been a contender for a southpaw technique. I don't know if this guy would be a southpaw of the year, but it was $1 million knockout. That's Patchy Mix over Rafian Stotts. When I covered the Bellator 295 in Hawaii, it was for a title. Yeah. It was for the Grand Prix title, the tournament title, and for $1 million. So all three things.
That was Southpaw versus Southpaw, right?
Yeah, it was Southpaw versus Southpaw. It was he did a jab, like a feint jab, and then he did another one to close.
Yeah, it was a very peculiar, like knee from close stances. Yeah.
Yeah, because that lane is like you don't see that power lane. You're usually protected from the kicks, right? Hence, like Calvin Kattar going southpaw against Giga to close that lane, right?
Yeah.
But something I always say, even if you're a good striker and a normal southpaw, for whatever reason, left from the rear, we have a blind side too. And you could also count that straight lane, even though it's coming upward, for that knee. Because that's just like to your side, what you said, Feno, is a weird striking lane that he really hits the knockout with. But it was perfect for the stature and the natural dipping propensities of I wouldn't necessarily call Stotts a wrestle boxer, right? Because he's got some like Leon Edwards looks to him too as well, right?
Yeah.
But like you know what I mean. But as far as that stature of a fighter goes, like you're not too off as far as catching a dip percentage wise in your favor, whether they're dipping or not because of the height difference. And for those of you who follow me on Instagram, Dan Tom MMA, but with the underscores between the Dan Tom and the MMA. I remember my Instagram stories that night was really crazy because I covered these events, these Bellator. I've covered pretty much every Bellator Hawaii event minus the 2021 show that Bellator did. So I was kind of bummed with this Bellator announcement, right? Because I like that they were bringing MMA back to the Blaisdell. And I'm not like a real camera hoary guy or like engagement video guy. But, I try to make use of it, and I actually get super active. I get my most engagement and follows on Instagram when I'm covering these shows live because it's cool looking. It's a Bellator show. You're out in Hawaii. Not a lot of media's out there, right? So it's kind of like Prime. And the cool part is if you follow my story, and I don't know why I was back for this, and this is not something I would do. It feels like something that I almost was mad at myself. I'm like, I couldn't remember. It must not have felt awkward at the time, which is why I did it. But if you look at my IG story, I was behind the curtain when Stotts was getting ready to make his walk, and it's from his side profile, right, from his left, and you almost see him doing the talking to yourself. All right, let's go, and he almost had it in his face, like not like he wasn't the overpumped guy, like yeah, let's go. It almost was like his body language was like there was almost a shrug. He almost was like, all right, let's see what this is about. And he kind of just nonchalantly, and you see him just walk past the curtain. And then immediately after my next story is like, looks like you're at a Pride show because they did the whole confetti falling, which adds to the effect, right, of the knockout, the $1 million. But you just see confetti falling and Stotts laying on the ground and Mick celebrating and everybody in shock. And so when you look at it from my IG story, it all stuck out to me, like how dramatic that was. Like, you just see a guy like kind of walking toward the light, like an alien abduction, like he doesn't realize he's about to get snatched. And then the next scene, boom, he got snatched. He's gone. It was the craziest thing. And
that was crazy.
And watching it felt the same too because I didn't have any betting bias on this one either, obviously, because I'm covering it, so I don't bet on the fights that I'm there covering. Believe it or not, it's weird. I'm not a journalist yet. I actually stick to journalist things. Funny that, right, Feno? But yeah, so I had no bias or anything on there, but I did pick Stotts to win, and he was favored to win, and came through as an underdog just like Emmett did. Different context. That was a stupid underdog that Emmett shouldn't have been. That made that extra sweet. But yeah, I long-winded, but patchy mix for me.
I have some other picks that I remember.
Shout, if you have any shouts, go.
One of the one of the most emotional, and I think we're going to talk about this one again, so I won't go into more detail, but Lawler versus Price, let's just leave it at that. Uh,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Ige versus Jackson was also like very similar to like the Mitchell Emmett
I'm glad you
levels
mentioned
of
that. That was the very
brutal.
first card of the
That was
year. So people forget
insane.
that was a beautiful
Yeah.
left hook knockout. Great shout. Great shout. Yeah.
Uh,
That's,
and yeah, and now that you talk Bellator, the Larkin
oh,
versus
Lorenz Larkin.
Berkamo,
Yes, I had that
like the
written
spin
down.
him and the elbow, that's
I
beautiful
had that
knockout.
written
Yeah.
down.
So
Bellator 290. Yeah, that Lorenz Larkin. That was right up there with my right on the top for me.
and
Good,
also
good shout.
the Bobby Green versus Dawson.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Absolutely.
That was so good.
thought you were gonna be a dick and say Jalen Turner. Like, no. I saw Jalen Turner, by the way, and everybody was like talking to him, and like he's such a nice guy. He's the one guy I actually wanted to talk to because I really like him. I was like, I owe him a beer, at least a beer for like the Brad Riddell submission, but then I'm also really sad still over the Bobby Green thing. Not that it was his fault; it was Kerry Hatley's fault, who was there reffing as well. Like, oh, I saw Kerry Hatley. I'm like, that'd be funny. He just gives Jalen Turner a head nod, like Fight Club, like a knowing nod. Like, oh shit. Just kidding. Folks, I'm gonna just push to the last of the awards, just because I want to get through this and get the show wrapped. And I'll promise I'll touch up you guys in the chat. Sub of the year, submission of the year. I guess I'll go first on this one. There was another
Okay.
recency bias cheeky pick that I really wanted to pick. That's funny, and I was gonna go with. I'm not gonna say in case it's your pick, but I actually ended up going with something outside the UFC that happened earlier in the year as well. He was on my prospects to watch list, even though he was one of the more obvious ones. And this was a really bad performance from him in a weight class he shouldn't have been. That is the Lazy King, Abduragimov in Aries 11 when he fought, what was it? The Heretic, Rafael Heretic. And he's essentially losing. He goes up to middleweight, and he's a guy who probably should be at lightweight. He's not the biggest welterweight at 5. Probably generous listed at 5'10". He's probably more like me, like 5'9". And he went up to middleweight, was essentially getting beaten, looked stupid, finally had all his hype, potentially getting ready to sign for the UFC. We're watching 5 rounds of him getting just squashed in a big fight that they really, promoted well for this organization. And we're like, oh, we're all looking stupid. All the hipsters who like the Lazy King and like me who put him in the list was looking dumb. And how do you not give credit to like a Chael Sonnen Anderson Silva UFC 117-esque comeback 5th round submission? You know what I'm saying? And it was a knee bar.
Yeah, for
He
sure.
just rolled for. I rewatched this one. My sub of the year. Just because it was a comeback, stupid submission like that shouldn't have happened.
Then he and then again took another fight where he was like super undersized on PFL on his next
At
one.
welterweight,
I hope
yeah.
he does lightweight
Me
in
too.
the future. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what did you have for your sub of the year?
I think like on cool factor, like I'm not picking this, but I wanted to mention the Davy Grant versus Asuncao, just because it's like an inverted triangle. It's so weird. But I wanted to go, and I hate that one because I love Rafael Asuncao.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go with more for like boring because they're both like rear naked chokes, but they were like super cool technically. The Pachi Mix versus Sergio, that also
Oh,
hurts
yeah.
my soul because
Yeah, I
Sergio
know.
is like one of my absolute favorites.
Me too.
And Brady over Gastelum, that one was very cool too.
That was good. Those are great shouts. Absolutely great shouts. You didn't name mine. Mine was going to be you Anderson Brito, baby, over
Oh, yeah,
something.
that was
Do something. And then
the,
he's like, okay.
the power guillotine, yeah.
Especially after, what's his name? JSP. Worst nickname ever, JSP, as bad of a nickname, is as bad of OSP and Henan Baral's victory dances, right? The 2 worst victory dances. And then the weird Henan Baral weird disco thing that everybody forgets about. Between that and weighing in on those dirty drawers, his lucky drawers, like he was Will Smith. Like, get this man a new set of boxers, for Christ's sake. Sorry. Random Henan Baral memories. But yeah, Anderson Brito, that guillotine was a front runner, and I bet on Brito too, so that was extra like rewarding. You're like, yes, underdog money, cash it. Uh,
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about like not a category, but one of the like submission techniques of the year is like the power guillotine ninja choke.
yeah.
We
Yes.
saw
Yeah.
that one quite a lot, like Said Nurmagomedov, Mayra Bueno Silva,
Yep.
John Anderson Brito. And yeah, people are learning to catch it, especially against grinders, against the cage, and it's like a great tool to have in there, especially because you're not getting out of those.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, last two awards, just real quick. Jimmy Kudo's zingers in the chat over here. Jimmy Kudo, we need a Pat Barry button. Girls of 15. I appreciate that reference. Oh my God. Couldn't they have changed the name of that song? Ronan Curtis, they took like 2 hours before getting Victor Henry to the hospital as well. Oh my gosh. His nuts were probably swollen to the size of grapefruits. Rain Lamina, I think the proper term for Song Yadong is black explosive. I don't even want to go into that category for Song Yadong because we're just going to get into a whole other thing of racism, and I'm, believe it or not, trying not to steer in that direction. We are all Pantoja fans. All right, I'm glad to see Zhang Gang is also Pantoja gang. Pantoja fought off the youth bully Moreno. I've never heard youth bully. I'm going to assume that's a joke because that's funny. Male fighter of the year for James Kendrick. He says will not. Says male fighter of the year for me will not go to Sean Strickland. Curious who you did give it to. There's M Boys. Thanks for taking my suggestion. I like the Grasso Lopez and what they are doing. For bad corner advice, I think Dern and her. Oh yeah, Thug Life. How do we forget that? Great shout. As far as corner moment. How about Dern getting shot at Thug Life? Thug Life! Thug Life! Against Jessica Andrade.
I did not see that one. I did not hear that.
They were, yeah, that's what
I'm going to rewatch.
So that's what they traded Perillo for. That was the striking advice. Thug Life! Swing. That was the code to trade. Great advice. Gets Andrade. Great advice when you have a chin that's married to this guy and you're fighting Jessica Andrade. Jin Karasu Pantoja is my fight of the year because he's a PYN favorite. I'm glad, man. I'm glad my Pantoja preaching seems to have infected you guys. Jin adds that I think you can say that about all the divisions below 155. All of them are competitive. All right. Shouts to that. All right, last two. Heartbreak of the year. I feel like we're both going to have the same ones for both of these, but go ahead, Fenyo. What did you have for your heartbreak of 2023?
I mean, only as a fan and not narrative or anything, just because they're my favorite fighters. Like seeing like Dustin Poirier and Sergio Pettis lose this year,
yeah,
it fucking sucked. It sucks so much. Great wins for Gagey and Pachi.
Yes,
so,
sure.
And very good performance by both. So that makes it suck a little bit less.
Yeah, I think I picked I picked Poirier.
Poatan losing to East.
Oh yeah.
Also, just because I thought like Pereira was finally fighting like the perfect fight against ECN.
Yes.
And finally, when he actually fights well, he loses that one. It was so weird.
And then Izzy does the whole taking my controller and leaving. You know, like, oh well, looks like it's all done here. Looks like I won the series. And you're like, oh motherfucker. And by the way, like I don't hate on Izzy for that performance. You know, despite some of the other stuff he did afterwards, which was just weird to me. I just thought it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But like, I don't blame anybody as well for having that as their KO of the year. But obviously, I sentiment with Fenyo here for that. I'm a big Poatan guy. I'm surprised you didn't mention mine, considering it's burnt into my head because you impersonate. And I'm going to call on you to do it here live on the show. You impersonate one part of this. And you have to go back to UFC, the first pay-per-view of the year, UFC 283 in Brazil. And that was the execution of Shogun. Won it for me against the Duelist. The Duelist. We're about to see a duel. Did we have to see that duel? Do the thing. Do his
Oh my god, that sucks so much, dude. Shogun
he does the duel.
One of my. But he did not fire.
And it's funny. It's funny because like I so like use I don't play Fortnite, so I don't even know it. But I use the Fortnite analogy and the victory lap dancing analogy when I talk about like this generation just being the worst winners. Like winning stuff they have no business winning, and then they feel like they have to victory lap, you know, and doing their Fortnite dances. So the fact that I say that, Fenyo, and then sure enough, one of my favorites, one of our OG favorites, right? If you've been watching the sport, Shogun, he literally gets victory lapped with a Fortnite meme dance. I was like, what am I watching? What alternate reality am I watching here? This is just sad. And I wrote in my notes here. I wrote Shogun Ice by Ihor, and I wrote in parentheses, letting me know just what kind of year I was gonna be in for. As the first pay-per-view of the year.
Oh yeah, that was so bad. Like, and Potira, for his credit, he looked very good in his last fight where he lost, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
But on the Shogun fight, he was looking like trash.
He did.
And he still won, like,
No
because
business.
Shogun has been
Yeah.
56 years old since he's like 31. So
Yep.
it was tragic, yeah.
Yep.
Because on the same card we have Jamal Hill killing Glover, right?
Yes, yeah. Oh, that was depressing.
But at least Hill had to put on a good performance on that one.
And then
At least.
And then Glover, even people that were just like, the classic MMA bettors that were like, fuck the old man, yeah, down with the old man. Even those people were like teary-eyed, like, hey, I get why you like this Glover guy, because remember Glover just does the classic Glover thing, because he saw everybody bombard Moreno with the fight before that, right? With like a bunch of like they threw a bunch of stuff at him, or they threw at somebody, I forget, and Glover does the classic thing. He goes, hey, you see this guy? He's walking back with me, so no one throws anything. Like, how classy is that, Glover? Just, again, like you could almost, I almost didn't have to say fuck you, anybody who's picked against him, because I feel like everybody who ever picked against Glover was just like, fuck me for ever picking against this guy or rooting against this guy. What the fuck is wrong with me? I feel like everybody collectively had to have that moment, but it was sad other than that, yes, as a Glover fan. All right, last word, and then we'll finally get out of here. Sorry for the long show, folks. Feno, thank you for being a trooper, man. Okay, we got to align on this one, I imagine. We have the same one. Feel-good moment of the year. We're going to end on a high note. Feel-good moment of the year. Should I go first on this one, Feno?
Yeah, you can.
I think it'll tie with, because it's the exact inverse of my pick, that's why. It was the opposite of Shogun getting... This is one of the rare cases, like Chris Lytle, Dan Hardy,
yeah.
where the veteran actually gets to go off on a good note. And, it gets tricky when we talk about who deserves this. Who really deserves it more than the other. And who, for all we know, the person who we think could deserve it most could be like a closet, you have like a closet like a kiddie porn dungeon, like the Patrick Swayze and Donnie Darko, for all we know, right? Wow, Dan, that was dark. The point is, we don't know who deserves it any more than the other person. But Robbie Lawler at UFC 290, again, card of the year. And I admittedly picked Nico Price. It was the classic Phil McKenzie, shout out to the Heavy Hands podcast, sadness hedge. And I had never been more happier to be wrong about a pick, Feno. Was this your feel good, or did you have something different?
Yeah, no. I have a few others, but the greatest one to me, to be quite honest, it was that one. It was amazing. And I thought it was possible, but I think I went with Price. Because Nico has been looking super old as of late too. So
Right.
But what made it great, it was that Robbie looked amazing. It was just not the knockout. He was looking great of the whole fight. And then he killed him. It was like in the clinch, right? Like
Yeah.
an uppercut from the clinch.
Yeah.
It was, oh my God, it was so good.
Yeah, it was. It
It
reminded me of
was
like
so good.
in the ring, he would do that more like in the corner, like Nico Vitale, following Nico Vitale, reminded me of like one of his old school finishes, or like even Frank Trigg, those in close uppercuts and just like, yeah. And then how about even the UFC, right? Like, you got to give him credit where it's due. In an age where we barely get walkouts anymore, they made sure they played Robbie Lawler's walkout, which we had the Last of the Mohicans, the Trevor, whatever Promontory. I love that song. It's on my workout mix, right? And then they play him off with the Dave and Sam, hold on, I'm coming. And they give him the package.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Rogan
That
didn't
was
fumble the
great,
bag.
yeah.
Like, everybody, for as much as we shit on UFC, or I don't think people should shit on UFC production, because I feel like they get it unfairly. Those people are, like, really hardworking people that have to deal with so much bullshit, and it's not their say, So I think they should get credit anyways. But again, the production was on point. Rogan did a good job. He didn't fumble the bag. Like, everybody just did their job, man. And you gotta just... it was perfect, man. You got to give credit even to the UFC on that, because that's not their style. You know, like we said, they try to get the old guys out of there in more ways than one. To give them the due like this, you know, and in a fight that, you know, he was a 2-1 dog and they still had all that production preparation and packages ready to
Yeah,
go. Like, you
yeah,
got to give
that,
them
yeah,
credit there, man. That's big.
yeah. That was for sure. The other two for me were Pantoja Moreno again, like just so cathartic as a moment. Seeing like Pantoja
Yeah,
like against all odds, like getting it.
sure, absolutely, yeah.
Uh,
And
but yeah,
then the post fight speech
it
with the
feels like
yeah.
the yeah that speech like, about his dad, everything, and and yeah, I mean it really felt like the UFC was waiting for him to be old enough to lose to Moreno, and
Yeah.
it didn't work out.
Yeah, even fans who picked him, like us, even we were a bit nervous, right? You know, maybe to differing degrees, but for Royval and obviously, especially Moreno, those weren't the safest fights on paper, even despite beating them.
And the last one, maybe not as satisfactory, but it had many moments that gave me a lot of joy. It was like Leon just bunking like Colby during the fight, like taking him down,
Yeah,
like
that was
Colby trying to do stupid shit and getting countered, looking like a fucking mess. Like I don't care if Colby won the fifth round, and to be honest, like he kind of didn't. Like he did nothing from top
yeah,
position.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, we all wanted the big KO, especially after the stupid shit that Colby said. But Colby looking like a dunce, like he didn't belong in there with Leon Edwards, was so good.
yeah,
Like when Leon just got back from the first takedown, he drove him to the cage and took him down just to humiliate him. Like it was great. It's a
that was
great moment.
hilarious. That was hilarious. All right, I'm going to clean up the chat before we get out of here. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Jimmy Kudo, KO of the year is easy. Josh Emmett versus Mitchell. Jin Karasu went with Izzy versus Pereira. All very defensible picks. Rios and Truesdale. Lawler versus Price was cool. What a way to end a career. Absolutely. Rain Lamina. Random one. Saint Denis over Frivola for KO of the year. That was definitely a crazy one. Caught him just at the end of that one, too. End of that kick. Jimmy Kudo, Dustin losing was sad. I love Dustin. Yeah, fellow Dustin people. Duelist mention. I know that there's about to be a duel. I got another. The Duelist. Oh my fucking god, that was cringe. Rain Lamina says. Ronan Curtis, but he did not fire because he respected his opponent. Important note. Important note.
Very important, yeah.
No. I'm sure that's exactly how the crowd interpreted him wagging their finger at them, too, by the way. If Shogun had to get KO'd in the year 2023, I'm glad it was to somebody so honorable. Oh, my God. Every time Ihor fights, I hope he loses. That's from James Kendrick. Jimmy Kudo, Ihor Pateria is a Muppet. Wow. Ihor.
He's getting trashed.
He's getting trashed. Wrestle Jamia, my nickname is Duelist, and that was a duel, and I took out my gun, but I did not fire. I fired into the air because I respect my opponent, so I told him, respect. That's a great quote. Jamie is the GOAT when it comes to the Ehor discussion. Yes, he is. I appreciate the hell out of it. Thank you, sir, for showing up. Rios doesn't choose Jamal Hill destroying Glover was very sad, and great shout out for Heartbreak of the Year. That was a really good shout out. Yeah, that was a good shout out. Jimmy Kudo, feel good moment of the year is Pantoja calling out his deadbeat dad. That's great. Yes. I love those memes, by the way, like where it's like me and the boys looking for Pantoja's deadbeat dad, and it's like a crew going down the street. Like, those are my number two favorite MMA memes. You know my number one favorite MMA meme / thing is / feel good thing is, because it's one of the only things that's just innocent, honest fun, is Poatan standing next to people who fought in divisions higher than middleweight, but he makes them look like lightweights. That is my favorite genre of MMA content, bar none. Over breakdowns, podcasts, GIFs, threads. No. Poatan standing next to people making them look small who shouldn't be small. That is my favorite brand. What about you, Fenya? You enjoy that brand of...
Yeah, I love
It's
those.
the
Like,
best.
Potan's so fucking big. Like, Like it's insane because obviously he was a very big 185, but then he moved up to 205. He put immediately like on 20 pounds.
Yes, I remember that when he
He's
was still at
so
middleweight.
fucking big. I couldn't believe like Poatan next to Blahovic.
Yeah,
He was like way bigger. Like
the Reyes
and
one surprised
Blahovic like
me. The Reyes one really surprised me the most, like because he was still like at middleweight when he took that photo. I think.
oh yeah.
And he's
But it's
just,
like out of camp. Like maybe you don't know, but and then like Jiri is enormous dude. And they were the same size, like exactly the same size. Like what in the fuck?
yep. Ronan Curtis, especially because UFC rarely does that for their old fighters. Talking about the Robbie Lawler thing. Yep, absolutely. It was definitely a tribute. Wrestle Jamia, Josie Aldo Hall of Fame induction, maybe. Oh, that was a feel good moment.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about the UFC Hall of Fame, but Aldo was so happy
That
about
was so
it that
cool. Yeah.
it's like impossible not to feel good for him. Yeah.
I did see a funny tweet from my guy Ben the Baines. He did the Aldo thing where he was like getting his acceptance, and it was like Santa on his 436 glass of milk, trying to get himself pumped up for the next one. I was like, that was a good one. Makoto Kayagoku, how about Leon almost crying in his post-fight after the garbage Colby said about Leon's dad? It might have been a terrible fight, but I'm happy that Leon won. As far as feel good, I'm guessing, yeah, I mean, that was probably cathartic for him. Rain Lamina, why did they shake the camera when Ihor did his dance? I don't know. I had to look back at that detail.
It was too powerful. It was
It's too
the honor
powerful.
was too much. Yeah.
It's too powerful. Pepe Silva, Lawler showed that even the weak, soggy penis can still come through. That's right. That's right. Oh man, if I would have bet on Lawler and that would have been a category, Pepe, that would have been definitely the soggy penis special of the year. Like Bill Burr podcast is the Monday Night Special. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I gotta have my own song, you know. But yeah, that'll be anytime I bet on old fighters. The Saki Dick special. Last one, James Kendrick. The brand of meme Jack Slack does for Adriano Moraes, but he likes to find pics of him standing next to 125ers looking normal size because DJ fans pretend that Moraes is a huge fighter. That is a new one this year. That's great. That is great. Rain Lamina, this became the trash Ehor. It did at the end, but hey, we're all having a good time. Thank you guys for sticking around. It was a long podcast, but you know what? There's not a lot of MMA content out right now, so hopefully this will hold you over until Feno's awards shows and the other awards shows of my guy Combat Chronicles and the others that we kind of reference here. Love to shout out the community. I don't think I'm any special, my awards or takes are, but I appreciate you guys, coming and hanging out and I guess caring enough about my takes to hang out, even though I don't, you shouldn't, we shouldn't take us so seriously. Feno, thank you for being here, my man. Anything you want to say to close out the year? Anything you want to plug, promote? Stage is yours.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. As always, check out the fight site. The website in itself has been a bit inactive as of late, but we're still getting content out. I have 2 podcasts. I have the weekly, the early prelims podcast. I just go over what's happening in mainstream MMA every week. It's just more informal, that kind of shit. I like to find a balance between narratives and technical analysis. Then for every UFC pay-per-view, I do the full preview. I scout every single fighter in that card, and I talk about all the fights. I give my thoughts about the matchup. I put a lot of work into that. It's very good in my opinion. I might be subjective there. And follow me on Twitter. I post a lot of clips with explanations and shit. If you enjoy the technical side of MMA, especially striking, follow me. I talk a lot about that. I'm also super responsive. I reply to a lot of tweets, including the super dumb ones. There are no dumb questions in this world. Maybe there are a few dumb questions.
There's no stupid questions, just stupid people.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, you have my Twitter handle there. And if you want to support my work and the rest of the fight site, you can go to our Patreon. Patreon, we have a lot of exclusive content that we cannot put anywhere else, especially like videos that have gotten
Mm.
copyright on the past that are clearly fair use. We're not like promoting piracy, maybe. And and yeah, I mean it's all good stuff, and you can get access to our Discord server. And finally, wanna give a shout out to my colleague from the fight side, Tumen.
Yes, good. I had it pulled up right
He's
now. Perfect timing.
yeah,
Yes.
he's incarcerated in an ICE facility. In this moment, he was trying to cross the border from Mexico to the USA after escaping the war from Russia because he was in danger of getting drafted to go to war with Ukraine. All crazy stuff.
Yep.
So he was seeking political asylum in the US, and sadly he got like set up, got trapped, and he's with a lot of fellow Russians in an ICE facility, very bad conditions, by the way. And it's like it sucks. Like mobility is a human right, and now he's like in jail because of it. So we're trying to get some funds to get him a good lawyer to help him in his situation. And if you can help with any amount of money, that would be greatly appreciated. So please, we have the links in the description.
Yep.
Look into it. We have like very thorough explanations of everything that happened. It's all very legit. It's a real like concern,
Yeah.
and it would do wonders for us and especially for him and his family if you could help. So thank you about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna bring it up at the beginning of the show, but I had the tab pulled up, so it was a perfect transition. This is Tumen. I don't know if I've had him on this show, but I've podcasted with him a bunch. You guys have seen me share links for what's going on with him. I haven't talked too much about it on the program. A lot of things. It's just I was just talking about the other day. Like there's things that I try to do on the side when I can, and try to help. Just whatever you can do to help people. Money's not an end all be all. We all don't have it or have a lot of it, and that's fine. It's like whatever you can, even if it's like just $1. But instead of plugging stuff for my podcast or ways you could support or give me money, I'm just going to use that to parlay into this. I already have it included in the show links, and it'll be in the links in the future if you're listening on iTunes for the Ko-Fi. This is a real person. This is a real problem. I know, a lot of us, unfortunately, it goes with the stereotype and whatnot. But yes, a lot of us very privileged folk, whether American, North American, whatever, Western society, whatever you want to say, whatever part of the world you're from, we tend to do this thing where like we'll like put like a flag up or like a symbol, and we're like, okay, that's what we've contributed to the. I've got the Ukraine flag. That's it. And what we don't realize is like the actual costs of these things. Russia's invasion and what they did do to people. What this entails, and what he just said as far as Tumen, especially where he is located geographically, and the people who, not just Russia, but in general, who they like to send to war in these front lines. He was in danger of being one of those people, and it's very bothersome. I haven't met Tumen in person, had that privilege, but having so many conversations publicly and privately with this guy, and I don't know, just knowing somebody going through that really hits different, because so much of us, we're so privileged that it's like, oh, it's something that's far away. This doesn't affect us, but it does, man. And it's just, that's why that's why I get so mad at people that tell me to stick to sports, because I have been, believe it or not, because whether it's knowing people going through this shit, whether it's knowing people that were, on campus for the UNLV shooting, whether it's the fucking genocide going on across the world right now, it's like there's a lot of depressing shit out there. So I actually, haven't been saying much about it, because honestly, it's just been depressing. I almost feel bad because I'm not as vocal about some of these things, like with the Tumen thing, obviously. But man, there's just a lot of like real stuff going on. So that I want to end this on a positive note, but this was something really important. I wouldn't be sharing it out if it wasn't. So I'll share the link out again on my social medias. Follow me at Dan Tom MMA. Follow the podcast at the PYN Podcast. And I will have links if you want to donate to Two Men's Legal Fund. And shouts to the people who are putting those funds and helping him with legal care together. It's a group effort from what I understand, and just more awesome people in this community. Just they're out there, folks. They're not public, but they're out there. So thank you for being some of those awesome people. Feno, thank you for obviously being one of the awesome people coming on this show. A fantastic resource for the community for your analysis. Somebody who also is not afraid to stand up for just causes and help people in need. And that shouldn't be a political thing. That should just be a human being thing, and it should be a human being thing more human beings should embrace. So hopefully you guys are helping, are there for your fellow people, whether it's in your family or not, and we look out for each other as best we can. I'm not trying to get too preachy. I feel like that's just a basic human being thing. So I genuinely wish you guys all the best in this next coming year. I know the holidays, it's been tough for me, but like someone pointed out, I'm smiling, I'm feeling it. A lot for us to look forward to. Hopefully you guys can find your own to look forward to. My line is open to you. Otherwise, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what I can help, but I'm here. I'm around. You can message me. And yeah, follow the podcast, support the show if you want. But there's more important things you can support, so you can probably do that. We'll be around. We'll be free. We're not going anywhere. Be back next year with breakdown shows. Got top 5 shows. Daniel Tom MMA. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, 5-star ratings and reviews. I'll get to the Amazon reads and all the normal plugs in the next show. I want to put a plug in it for now. It's been long enough. Thank you guys. Have a good new year. Be safe. And always protect your neck.